Chapter 783. Before participating in the auditions, Lu Xiaoxiu and Miao Chuan did not know the rules of China's The Voice's auditions. They subconsciously thought that the auditions would be similar to other shows, with a few judges sitting on the stage, and the contestants going up to sing. But when it was their turn, Lu Xiaoxiu and Miao Chuan were led to a specially arranged meeting room. Only then did they see the grand scale of the auditions. The meeting room was separated by a curtain that was half the height of the wall. No one could see what was going on behind the curtain, but on the other side of the curtain, there were 2 cameras recording. Of course, the judge behind the curtain still spoke. He had to announce the rules. Later, Lu Xiaoxiu and Miao Chuan would be singing the song they had prepared without any accompaniment. They could not use their guitars even if they had brought them along. The 3 judges would listen to them sing from behind the curtain. Contestants who received 2 or more passes would pass the preliminary auditions. No wonder the show's introduction said that the auditions were based on good singing, not good looks or good stories. Now, the judges could not see the contestants' faces, and would not give the contestants a chance to explain their names or experiences. It was a blind audition. The auditions were based on their voices. Lu Xiaoxiu and Miao Chuan liked this rule very much because they were not handsome. Moreover, after a year of settling down, the 2 of them had also honed their singing skills under the guidance of Jin Yingming and Yang Yi. They were more confident about this. But Lu Xiaoxiu and Miao Chuan were not used to not being able to use their guitars. They were nervous for a while. Without further ado, time was tight. Lu Xiaoxiu and Miao Chuan took a deep breath and started singing. They sang folk songs that were already famous. Although it would have been better to sing their own songs, it was not the right time yet. Plus, they sang songs that the judges were familiar with, so it was safer. 3 minutes later, time was up. Lu Xiaoxiu and Miao Chuan stopped singing. A staff member pulled open the curtain, and the 3 judges appeared in front of them, holding up their boards. 3 passes. It was just the preliminary auditions. This result was not something to be proud of. But Lu Xiaoxiu and Miao Chuan, who were so nervous just now, heaved a sigh of relief and smiled excitedly. "You're a group, right?" One of the judges put down his sign and said, "You sang well. Keep up the good work." These judges were hired through Beijing television stations' connections, and were experienced music producers in the industry. Although they could not compare to the 4 coaches behind them, they were people who understood music and the music market very well. Furthermore, they were very picky. Under their control, the auditions would definitely screen out many people whose voices and singing quality did not pass. Receiving their praise, Lu Xiaoxiu and Miao Chuan could be considered to be in a good mood. However, Lu Xiaoxiu and Miao Chuan, who did not know their identities, could only nod and thank them in a half-surprised and half-confused manner. Carrying their guitars on their backs, Lu Xiaoxiu and Miao Chuan looked at each other and sighed. The format of this program is really interesting. Lu Xiaoxiu laughed and teased. Fortunately, they don't choose based on looks. Otherwise, we might not have been able to pass so many tests. We've only passed the preliminary audition. We still have to go through 5 trials and kill 6 generals. Miao Chuan waved his hand blade and made a few chirping noises. Perhaps it was because he was happy that Miao Chuan, this wooden fellow, started joking. Then let's go through 5 trials and kill 6 generals. After all, we're people who have undergone so much training and toughening. Why would we be afraid of such a small challenge? Lu Xiaoxiu said confidently. The auditions for China's The Voice were held simultaneously in every provincial capital city in the country. After just one day, the media was already reporting about the program. Among the reports, some were arranged by China Star Production to create hype, but there were also quite a few true reports. After all, Yang Yi had successfully produced the Limit Challenge, the most popular variety show in the first half of the year. When he launched a new variety show, it naturally attracted a lot of attention. There were even quite a number of reporters who filled in the application list and personally experienced the auditions for China's The Voice. Therefore, the auditions for China's The Voice were soon exposed by the media. The program's producers did not go back on their word, and the new blind audition rules received a lot of praise. Of course, there were also many voices of doubt. Is China's The Voice really a blind audition or a show? Lack of criteria. How can the auditions be fair? This report questioned the selection criteria of the judges behind the curtains. It was only a pass or a fail. Overly subjective evaluations would cause many of the voice to fail in the auditions. Singing behind the curtains, how can the quality of the voice be guaranteed? This media outlet definitely did not go to the auditions themselves, and only made their judgment based on the words of others. They did not know that the so-called curtains were not the kind of curtains that completely covered the auditions. The sound could be transmitted through the space above the curtains. Other than these doubts, there were also media teasing. When the TV broadcast of China's The Voice, the scene would definitely be like this. The judges and contestants would be separated by curtains, and both sides would be having fun in the two worlds behind the curtains. Obviously, the excitement of the program would be greatly reduced. However, China Star Production did not directly answer this question. They would not reveal all their cards before the program was broadcast. It would only be interesting if they left some surprises behind. However, within 2 days, the media outlet reported that Chen Yijie would be joining the first season of China's The Voice as one of the 4 coaches. The resourceful reporter even received confirmation from Chen Yijie's manager. Chen Yijie was going to be a coach. Let's not talk about why he was going to be a coach and not a judge. The netizens were all excited. Although Chen Yijie had not officially entered the music industry in China, his fame and status in the Chinese music industry were unquestionable. Otherwise, when he held concerts in China, all of them would not be full houses. With such a top-notch singer, who could even be considered a god of songs as a coach, China's The Voice's level immediately rose. More and more people signed up for the auditions. Everyone wanted to ride on the starlight. However, there were also smart media outlets who quickly guessed. Since one of the coaches had chosen Chen Yijie, then the other 3 coaches would not be of low importance. Even if they were not gods of songs, they would at least be seniors who had dominated the music industry before. However, to hire these people as coaches, the remuneration would be very impressive. Some people guessed that Chen Yijie's worth was worth at least 30 million. Although it was not a simple addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, the remuneration of these 4 coaches should be more than 100 million. This did not include the manpower and resources used for the nationwide auditions. Was China Star Production that rich? It was true. The media did not guess wrongly. Although Chen Yijie was invited by Yang Yi to join the show and his remuneration was discounted to only 20 million for a season, the budget of the entire show was as high as 200 million. Of course, this money was forked out by the sponsors, and the manufacturers had more information than the media. Just the first season's title sponsorship alone was snatched up by a mobile phone manufacturer for 150 million. Originally, Yang Yi wanted to leave it to Sahara Publishing House or Micro Broadcasting, but after seeing how crazy the other party was, he gave up on that idea. Other than the title sponsorship, there were also a lot of advertisements and product placements for sale. Beijing Television Station and China Star Production were naturally willing to spend money on this show. Of course, to Yang Yi, all these were just fleeting clouds. He left a game for others to enjoy while he leisurely prepared to attend Xixi kindergarten graduation ceremony. Chapter 784. June 26th was the big day for Xixi to graduate from Springfield Kindergarten. The weather today was very good. The bright and beautiful sun shone through the dense treetops on the side of the road, leaving specks of golden light on the ground. A gentle breeze blew through the busy streets, as if sweeping away the irritation in people's hearts at this moment. A tall Hummer SUV stopped by the roadside. After a while, Yang Yi, who was wearing a casual suit, got out of the driver's seat, went around to the other side, and carried Xixi, who was sitting in the child's safety seat. Xixi was wearing a new sapphire blue dress today. It had an elegant white lotus leaf petal collar, and a contrasting white silk ribbon with gold edges tied into a beautiful bow under the collar. It looked very much in line with the current popular college style. With her hair tied up in a bun and the same sapphire blue hair ribbon with white spots, the elegant, beautiful, playful, and cute little girl appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Murphy also got out of the car with Tong Tong in her arms. Yang Yi took the 2 bags from her hands. The family chatted and laughed as they walked to Springfield Kindergarten. Along the way, many of Xishi's classmates and their parents greeted Xishi and Yang Yi. The adults all praised Xishi for her beautiful dress today. For example, Wang Shijuan's father, who used to be friends only after fighting, praised, "Now I feel that Xishi is already a big girl." Yang Yi also smiled and praised Wang Xiyun. Politeness demands politeness, and they talked cheerfully and wittily. But there were also some who spoiled the fun. When they were about to reach the kindergarten, a few reporters who somehow found out that today was Xishi's graduation day were already waiting there. As soon as they saw Yang Yi and Murphy appear, they excitedly surrounded them. "Yang Yi, when will the Shawshank Redemption start shooting? Is the great director Wu Yian as strict as the rumors say? Will you play a role in it? Murphy, you haven't appeared in front of your fans for a long time. They are very anxious for you. When will you make a comeback? Murphy, it's said that one of the 4 coaches of China's Voice has been reserved for you. Is the news true?" Yang Yi. Not only did the reporters not stop asking questions, but they also tried their best to squeeze forward. They did not care about other people's safety, and their microphones were waving in front of Tong Tong. Murphy used her body to protect Tong Tong, while she squeezed by her father's side, like a boat floating in the sea. Yang Yi frowned, his face turning gloomy. Why were the reporters so reckless today? If not for this, Yang Yi might have answered a few simple questions before leaving. But since then he would not have let them. Make way. His voice was filled with anger. Of course, Yang Yi was not just joking. He stretched out 2 strong arms like a bulldozer to protect Mo Fei and Cici, and pushed away all the reporters on both sides in front of them. 3 reporters stood in front of them, while 2 reporters flanked them on both sides. However, their alliance was like a wall made of paper, easily broken with a single poke. Yang Yi stretched out his arms. They wanted to resist, but they realized that they could not withstand Yang Yi's terrifying strength, and were forced to retreat. Hey hey hey! There was a commotion. In the blink of an eye, Yang Yi cleared the path in front of him and led Murphy and Xishi through the entrance of Springfield Kindergarten. The unwilling reporters wanted to chase after them, but the security guards blocked their way. Yang Yi, it's fine if you don't want to be interviewed, but why did you hit people? A reporter shouted angrily, trying to get Yang Yi's attention and get some response. However, Yang Yi was different from other celebrities. He was not worried about the reporters writing nonsense. He and Murphy walked into the building with the children without looking back and disappeared from the reporter's sight. I've never seen such a tasteless celebrity. He actually hit people. The reporters looked away helplessly, and someone complained angrily. The other reporters looked at him as if he was an idiot, but did not say anything. The so-called hitting people was just a label that they put on Yang Yi. Now that he was gone, what was the point of saying it? How could they not know in their hearts whether or not they had hit someone? However, Yang Yi was really strong. The 5 of them could not stop him, which was a little embarrassing. Since they could not interview Yang Yi, they could only disperse, find a nearby restaurant to rest, and wait for Yang Yi to come out and try again, or give up the interview and go back with their cameras. The small disturbance at the door did not affect Yang Yi and the others' happy mood today. Even she was used to the appearance of those reporters. Anyway, with her father, the big meat shield in front of her, she was not afraid at all. Papa, are we going to give this gift to Teacher Mu, Teacher Shen and Teacher Kai? She asked as she walked up the stairs obediently with her father holding her hand. Perhaps it was because she was wearing a beautiful little dress, but today she became a lot more ladylike. She did not take the lead and skipped in front. Yes, but there's no rush. We'll see what happens. Yang Yi smiled slightly. She is here with her parents. At the door of the big class, Teacher Mu, who was also dressed up today, greeted Xi with a smile. Hello, Teacher Mu. Xi was beside her father and greeted Teacher Mu obediently. Go and hug Teacher Mu, Murphy said with a smile. Because she did not want to affect Xi's mood, Murphy did not say the last half of her words. I'm afraid it will be very difficult to see Teacher Mu in the future. Teacher Mu squatted down and hugged the little girl who opened her small arms. Xi's small body was as soft as her little dress. Hugging this soft little girl, no matter who it was inevitable that thousands of tenderness and love would rise in their hearts. Teacher Mu liked every child in the class, but if she had to say which child she liked and admired the most, it would be Xixi. This kind and cute little girl was smart and helpful. Which teacher wouldn't like her? Teacher Mu had a lot of emotions in her heart, but when it came to her mouth, only gentle advice was left. Xixi, in the future, when you go to primary school, you have to study hard and make more good friends. Then, when you have the chance in the future, come back and visit Teacher Mu, okay? Xixi could not understand the emotions of the adults at the moment, but she could still feel Teacher Mu's love and care for her. The little girl smiled sweetly and said, I know. Teacher Mu, let me tell you, Papa, Mom, and I have made a gift for you. Hearing this, Yang Yi took out a simple box from his backpack and handed it to Xixi. Chapter 785. You even prepared a gift for me? Teacher Mu was a little surprised. Xixi hugged the box and smiled sweetly at Teacher Mu. Hee, that's right, Teacher Mu. I made it with Papa and Mom. Papa and I even went to the seaside to dig up seashells. We dug up a bucket, so many. Teacher Mu listened patiently. Finally, she saw Xixi take out the brush holder she made. It was very stunning at first glance. Although it was still made of curled bamboo mats, a lot of effort had been put into the decoration of the outer layer. It was done exquisitely and beautifully. Murphy used pink lace to glue a circle around the edge of the top opening of the brush holder. She even carefully pinched the wavy curls, making it look like undulating pink waves. There were 2 rows of fine words written vertically on the front. Yang Yi had helped Xixi write this, but Xixi's signature was written by herself. Other than the words, on the other side, there was a drawing of a beautiful sheep smiling happily while covering its face. The beautiful sheep's red face and big watery eyes were very cute. However, the beautiful sheep's white and curly hair was replaced by white, textured shells. This reflected the theme of the handicraft even more. At the bottom, there was a circle of smooth and delicate shells, just like the beautiful sheep stepping on a smooth pebbled road. It was worth mentioning that there were some plastic grass and small plastic trees on it, which made it look even more lively and interesting. This was drawn by my papa. I painted it and stuck this shell. Teacher Mu, sticking this shell made my hand sticky. Xixi happily told Teacher Mu about her contribution. It's really beautiful. Teacher likes it very much. You did it very carefully. Teacher Mu was still squatting. She hugged Xixi and said gently, Xixi, who wrote this poem? This was written by my papa. I don't know how to write so many words, Xixi explained honestly. Xixi knows how to recite this poem. Xixi, why don't you recite this poem with teacher? Murphy suggested with a smile. Yeah. Xixi readily agreed. She even said in a sweet voice, Spring fills the mountains and green fields, peaches and plums fight for the spring dew and smile. East, west, north, south, east, and west, spring is always there, only Shifu's grace pays attention to these places. Xixi recited without missing a single word, and with a clear articulation. It was very similar to the rhythm of reciting poems that her father had taught her before. There was even a cadence in the middle. It looked like she had practiced for a long time at home, but in fact she hadn't. Yang Yi had only taught her once or twice, and the little girl could memorize it. Her memory was indeed very good. After listening to Xixi recite the poem, Teacher Mu, who was already very touched, became more emotional at this moment. She hugged Xixi and said with red eyes, Thank you, Xixi. You're so great. Teacher is a little reluctant to let you graduate. Xixi, who was in Teacher Mu's arms, didn't feel the sadness of separation. She looked at her father with her big bright eyes. There was a happy smile in her eyes as if to tell her father, Teacher Mu likes my gift very much. After listening to the kindergarten director's words and the 3 teachers' summary, Yang Yi received Xixi's kindergarten souvenir album. The souvenir album contained the selected photos of Xixi's class in the past 2 years, some articles and memories of the 3 teachers, and so on. Of course, a souvenir album couldn't contain all the photos. There was also a CD inserted in the title page of the souvenir album. There were more photos and video recordings of activities. It could be said that the kindergarten had done a very good job in this aspect. These things he would slowly look at them when he went back. This time, All the parents and children gathered together. The most important thing, of course, was to take a group photo as a souvenir. After taking the group photo, Wu Yu suggested that she and the other 5 children take another group photo together. Then there were all kinds of group photos. There were photos of parents and children, photos of children, and photos of children in pairs. Yang Yi, the photographer, was very busy. Xi, I want to take a photo with you. Wang Shijuan, who was next to them, ran over. He first looked at Yang Yi timidly, and then said to Xi. Xi was very happy today. She didn't stop smiling. Wang Shijuan's request naturally wouldn't be rejected. The little girl nodded and said, "Okay. Then you all stand under this tree. I'll take a photo for you." Yang Yi held the camera and directed. Wang Shijuan was a little naughty, but he was quite honest when taking photos. He stood side by side with Xi, and he didn't hold Xi's hand like Lan Xian and the others. Although he was a little uncomfortable, he still raised 2 fingers and smiled, revealing his mouth that was missing 2 front teeth. After Wang Shijuan finished taking the photo, before he had time to say anything, his sister ran over. "Wang Shijuan, what are you doing?" Wang Xian asked loudly. "I'm taking a photo with Xi," Wang Shijuan said. "Then I also want to take a photo with Xi," Wang Xian said as if she wanted to snatch her brother's toy. Well, Yang Yi took another photo of Xi and Wang Xiyun. After the siblings left, Xi excitedly pulled her father's arm, wanting to see the results of the photo. Unexpectedly, another boy ran over. "Xi, I want to take a photo with you. Can I?" "Okay." Yang Yi and Murphy looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They didn't expect their daughter to be so popular. Xi took a photo with almost every child in her class. However, there was a small episode in the middle. Little Belle, who was Dingling, took her father's hand and came over to take a photo with Xi. After taking a photo with Xi, she looked at Yang Yi eagerly. "Uncle Yang, can I take a photo with you? There's something between us?" Although Yang Yi and Murphy were also asked to take a photo together, those were parents who chased after celebrities. The children all went to take photos with Xi. Yang Yi froze for a moment and smiled. Of course. Dingling's father took over the camera. When Yang Yi taught him the position of the buttons on the SLR, he smiled and said to Yang Yi, "Dingling has always liked you. Last time, she went to your studio with her classmates to record a song. When she came back, she kept talking about how good you are. Even I, as her father, was a little jealous." Yang Yi touched his nose and smiled awkwardly. When taking photos, Yang Yi also felt Dingling's love for him. Yang Yi hugged her, and she also hugged Yang Yi's neck, revealing a rare bright smile. Yang Yi could actually understand why Dingling liked him. She doesn't have a mother, so she's quite pitiful. Her father is probably the typical kind of father who doesn't know how to cook and is busy with work. Yang Yi looked at the lively figures of the children and whispered to Murphy. Perhaps it was because Yang Yi, who could cook and had a good temper, satisfied her desire for the role of a mother, so Dingling liked Yang Yi as if she wanted to have a mother. That's quite pitiful. You should persuade her father to find her a mother. Murphy's soft heart was touched. I'm not familiar with her father, and we haven't spoken much before. So forget it. This is her family's matter. Let them deal with it themselves. Yang Yi sighed softly and shook his head. After the commotion, Springfield Kindergarten returned to normal. After leaving Springfield Kindergarten, Xi followed her father and embarked on a new journey. Chapter 786. San Francisco International Airport, California. Mo Shawan, who was wearing sunglasses, sat on a chair in the waiting room. Her long legs were exposed under her tight skirt. Even though she had an Asian face, her hot body and proud temperament attracted many people's attention. Sister Shawan, Sister AI said that there are media reports that Mr. Yang hit a reporter. The assistant beside her came over with her phone. It had to be said that other than her own secretary, Mo Shawan had a few assistants with her. It was not that she was more famous than Yang Yi and Murphy, but these assistants were originally arranged for Yang Yi and Murphy. There were makeup artists, hairstylists, personal assistants, and so on. However, Yang Yi and Murphy were more eccentric. They did not like to bring a large group of people with them. Even if they went out to record a show, they preferred to be alone as a family. At most, they would ask Mo Xiaowan to come along. This way, they would be less of a target. Therefore, Mo Xiaowan could only bring these assistants with her. When Yang Yi and the rest needed them, it would be convenient for them to be sent over. Mo Xiaowan took off her sunglasses and glanced at the report on her assistant's phone. She nodded lightly and said, "I know about this. Those reporters almost bumped into the child, so Yang Yi pushed them away. He did not hit them. He was just protecting the child. Ask AI and the rest to clarify on microbroadcasting. If necessary, send a lawyer's letter to those news agencies." The assistant nodded and took out her phone to deal with work. "Is there any trouble? Do you need my help?" A white man sitting opposite her asked. Mo Xiaowan nodded at him and smiled. "Thank you, Wilson. It's just a small matter in the country." Yes, the man sitting opposite Mo Xiaowan was Wilson. Mo Xiaowan came to the United States early this time to help Yang Yi with the matters of opening a small company in the United States. Wilson had already resigned from his job at Treasure Management and became Yang Yi's first manager in the United States. They didn't have to wait too long before Yang Yi's family arrived at San Francisco International Airport. Among the crowd that came out one after another, Yang Yi, who was holding Cece, who had not yet woken up, and Mo Fei, who was holding little Momo, who had slept and eaten enough, and was looking around curiously, appeared in Mo Xiaojuan's vision. After a simple greeting, Yang Yi looked at Wilson, who was standing behind Mo Xiaowan, and looked a little nervous. Wilson was still more eye-catching. He quickly said what he had practiced in private many times. "Yang, welcome to the United States." "Thank you, and welcome to join us." Yang Yi smiled and shook hands with Wilson. Mo Xiaowan handed the luggage receipt to the only two male assistants in the team, and asked them to help collect the luggage. Then she introduced their situation to Yang Yi. The company's registration is now complete. However, Wilson is the only one. We still need to wait for the headhunting company to find other candidates. We can take it slow. Anyway, we will be in the United States for 2 months. Yang Yi nodded. The company was indeed just a startup. However, other than the people, everything else was already in place. During this time, Wilson followed Mo Xiaowan and saw how rich Yang Yi was. Mo Xiaowan rented an entire floor of an office building in the bustling business district of LA City. She also bought 6 cars in one go, ranging from a normal car to a nanny van and a limousine for attending events. Of course, Yang Yi and the rest did not have the time to inspect the company in LA. After resting for a night in San Francisco, Mo Xiaowan accompanied them on the plane to Texas. It had to be said that the domestic aviation in the United States was very convenient. From San Francisco on the west coast to Dallas in Texas in the middle of the country, it only took 3 hours for the plane to take off and land. Grandpa. As soon as they got off the plane, Shishi, who had been looking around, was the first to see Mo Henian holding a sign in the crowd. She was so excited that she shook her little butt in her father's arms and could not wait to tell him. They had not seen each other for a year, and Mo Henian had not changed much. The old man was still wearing his wide-brimmed cowboy hat, plain white t-shirt and jeans. However, Zhou Mingyu, who was standing behind him, was dressed more elegantly. The combination of colors and styles gave people a sense of fashion. Even though she was old, she was still like a lotus flower quietly blooming in the crowd. It was admirable. She still liked her grandpa. When they met, she smiled sweetly at Mo Henian. She opened her arms and jumped into her grandpa's arms from her father's arms. Mo Henian hugged his granddaughter and looked at his grandson in his daughter's arms. He chuckled. When he faced Yang Yi, he was much more amiable. Zhou Mingyu was completely attracted by Tong Tong. She did not even care about Yang Yi and Mo Xiaojuan's greetings. She responded casually and stretched out her arms to Tong Tong with a smile. "Hua Hua, let Grandma hug you." However, Tong Tong was more shy than before. He was no longer like when he was young, and could not be fooled with a pacifier. When he saw his grandmother, who he did not know, reaching out her arms, he turned his head and hid in the depths of his mother's arms. "Let Grandma hug you, okay?" Murphy persuaded softly. Of course, Tong Tong would not reply. He still did not know how to speak. Therefore, Murphy looked at his expression and passed him into his mother's arms. Zhou Mingyu hugged her grandson. The little guy was chubby. When she saw him, Zhou Mingyu's face lit up. However, Tong Tong did not like to be hugged by strangers. He reacted quickly. He turned his head to look at his mother. When he realized that his mother had no intention of taking him back, he pouted and blinked his eyes. Large drops of tears fell from his eyes. "Io, why are you crying? Don't cry. Good boy." Zhou Mingyu quickly comforted him. However, it was useless. Tong Tong opened his mouth and cried. He was so sad that it was as if he was really abandoned by his mother. Zhou Mingyu helplessly returned Tong Tong to Murphy. Miraculously, after returning to his mother's embrace and being coaxed by her, the little fellow's crying stopped within a few seconds. He just pursed his lips in grievance. Within half a minute, his tears also stopped, but there was still some lingering fear in his heart. Little brother doesn't like to be hugged by other people. Papa and I can do it. She explained to her grandmother in her grandfather's arms. There's no such thing. He's trying now. He's not familiar with Grandma. Mom, you can go back and play with him for a few days. After you're familiar with him, he'll be happy to be hugged by you. Murphy said with a smile. It's okay. It's good that you're back. Stay at home for a while. Zhou Mingyu happily held Murphy and Yang Yi's hands and said, phone calls and video calls. Now that technology was so advanced, Mo Fei had a lot of communication with her family. However, there was still a long distance between them. Now that Zhou Mingyu saw Murphy and saw that she and Yang Yi were doing well, she was relieved. Alright, stop wasting time here. If you have anything to say it when we get home. Mo Henian waved his hand. Chapter 787. His father-in-law's farm was not in the cow market. It was in the west of the cow market, near a small town called the Grassland. It was similar to the movies. The small town did not have tall buildings like the cities. Most of the buildings were made of wood. However, even though it was a small town, it had all kinds of facilities. There was also a small hospital. There were even 2 modern supermarkets. These supermarkets did not only serve the residents of the small town. The people from the surrounding farms would also drive their pickup trucks here to make purchases. There were no vegetable markets in America. Food, daily necessities, farm tools, and farming machinery could all be bought in the large supermarkets. Hey Mo. Mo Henian drove the jeep through the town. A middle-aged man dressed like a cowboy recognized him. He put his hands in his mouth and whistled loudly to greet him. Hey Beria, why are you here? Mo Henian nodded to the man and slowed down the car. I'm here to meet my son-in-law. It's his first time here. Murphy turned to Yang Yi when she heard the commotion. That is Uncle Beria. He is the owner of the farm next door. He is Latino. I heard that his ancestors came here 400 years ago. Your son-in-law? Who is he? That Beria laughed heartily at Mo Henian. Hello. Yang Yi rolled down the car window and greeted him. Uncle Beria, my name is Yang Yi. You can call me Leon. Not bad, not bad. You are a handsome young man. Beria sat on the back of the horse and gave Yang Yi a thumbs up. Gracias. Yang Yi smiled. You can speak Spanish? Beria was surprised. Yang Yi changed to Spanish and said, Yes, I learned a little in the past. He was being humble. This language was similar to Japanese. Yang Yi was proficient in it. Not only could he speak and listen, he could also write some simple articles in Spanish. The admiration in Beria's eyes for Yang Yi became even stronger. He also asked in Spanish, Where are Mo Fei and Xiao Cici? Are they back? We're back with our second child. Yang Yi said with a smile. Murphy couldn't understand Spanish, but she still heard her name. So she stuck her head out beside Yang Yi and greeted him with a smile. Hello, Uncle Beria. Murphy, long time no see. Your husband told me that you have a second child? Beria switched back to English. With a smile, he squeezed the horse's belly and let the horse slow down to get closer to the jeep. A small farming town had its own advantages. There were not many people in big grassland town. Especially the people in the farm, almost all of them knew each other. Along the way, Yang Yi was constantly greeted by Emohenian. Only then did Yang Yi realize his father-in-law's status here. However, what made Yang Yi even happier was Emohenian's attitude towards him. Although Emohenian still spoke bluntly to him, he still actively introduced him to his friends. It could be seen that Emohenian still admired him. It was just that Emohenian didn't want to express it. Soon, the jeep arrived at Emohenian's farm. Yang Yi held Shishi's hand and got off the jeep. They were warmly welcomed. The nanny, the cook, and a group of cowboys happily surrounded them, cheering and singing songs to welcome them. There was also a cowboy playing the guitar. Although the standard of the guitar wasn't high, the coquettish posture made people unable to hold back their laughter. "Welcome, young master." After singing, the Chinese cook took the lead and shouted. A group of white and black cowboys laughed and shouted with a strange accent in Chinese, "Guangyingyud." What a group of passionate people! Yang Yi was infected by their enthusiasm. When they were singing, he pulled Shishi and joined them in their strange dance. Thank you. Yang Yi cupped his hands and smiled. "You can call me Leon. You don't have to speak Chinese. I can communicate in English." Murphy joined in with Tong Tong. When the nanny, cook, and other females saw Tong Tong, they surrounded her lovingly and asked her all sorts of questions. "Little Shishi, do you still remember me?" An old cowboy asked Shishi with a smile. They hadn't seen each other for 3 years. If it were other children, they would have already forgotten everything that happened 3 years ago. But even if Shishi still remembered, she still felt very unfamiliar. The little girl hid behind her father's legs in embarrassment. She wasn't very sure and said weakly, "Are you Grandpa Ford? You really remember? What about me? Do you still remember me?" A black guy who was as tall as a bamboo pole asked loudly. Although he was tall, he was actually only a 16-year-old boy. In the past 2 years, he had only grown taller but not fatter. This time, Shishi couldn't recognize him. The little girl stood there awkwardly, not knowing what to do. "I'm Greg," the black guy said anxiously. The few black cowboys beside him all laughed. "Greg, you're too ugly. Who can recognize you? Big brother Greg." She remembered. This time, she finally remembered the big brother who used to play with her. But she still looked at her father awkwardly. "But big brother Greg isn't this tall." "I'm growing taller," Greg shouted. "Little Shishi, you've grown a lot taller too." All right. "Greg, have you helped me feed the horse?" Emohenian's heart ached for his granddaughter who was tired from the journey, so he stood up and glared at Greg who was a little too mischievous. "Didn't you say we can have a day off today?" Greg shrunk his neck. Although he was still stubborn, he only said that resentfully and turned to run away. "Little Shishi, I'll come and play with you later." Ford was the leader of the cowboys, and he also called for the cowboys to go back to work. Yang Yi and the others could finally enjoy a moment of free time and admire Emohenian's residence. F***CK. As soon as he walked in, Yang Yi was stunned. He couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. At this moment, he felt as if he had returned to Gusu. The huge courtyard was designed like a garden, and it felt as if Emohenian had moved a garden from Gusu over. The flowing water, small bridge, stone carvings, window carvings, and the house with white walls and black tiles gave people a retro feeling. Compared to his father-in-law's house, his own villa and courtyard were simply slums. Who was hired to design this house? It's the work of a master. Yang Yi couldn't help but exclaim. He didn't know that he had inadvertently flattered his father-in-law. Emohenian, who was walking in front, slightly raised the corner of his mouth, and then curled his lips. This was a kind of expression that showed that he was proud, but he didn't want others to know that he was proud. "It was my papa who designed it." Murphy smiled and said, he used to be an architect but later changed his profession. Inside, seeing the modern interior decoration and thinking about the classical architecture and garden design outside, Yang Yi's admiration for Emohenian was really like a torrential river. "You guys go to the room to tidy up, and come down to eat after changing your clothes." Zhou Mingyu smiled and arranged for them. "Yang Yi, when you come to our place, you don't have to think about cooking. We have people who specialize in cooking. Come over and have a good vacation with Murphy." "Okay, I'll listen to your arrangements." Yang Yi nodded. See, my mom is good to you, right? Murphy bumped Yang Yi's shoulder and giggled. When Mo Henian saw this, he said unhappily, "What vacation? Yang Yi, when you're free, come work with me and herd the cows. You've always lived in the city, and now you should experience the life of an American farmer." Chapter 788. Of course, Mo Henian was just scaring Yang Yi. This was his son-in-law's first visit, and he didn't really ask Yang Yi to herd cows or do farm work. In fact, Mo Henian took Shishi for a stroll during the day and came back to play with Tong Tong at night. He had so much fun that he didn't have time to make things difficult for Yang Yi. "Shishi, Grandpa will take you to ride a horse today, okay?" The next morning, Mo Henian suggested with a smile. "This year, Grandpa bought a batch of ponies. Your Grandpa Ford has already trained them. You can go and pick a pony that you like." "Really?" The little girl looked at her grandfather in surprise. She also liked horses because they looked very beautiful. Compared to other livestock except for little sheep, horses with big faces and elegant long hair were more in line with Shishi's aesthetic standards. "Really?" Mo Henian nodded affirmatively and looked serious. "There are all kinds of colors. Grandpa wanted to help you pick one, but I think you'll find one that you like. Ride a horse?" Murphy heard and said hesitantly, "Dad, if you want to teach Shishi how to ride a horse, it's best to let Yang Yi watch over her." Although Murphy had learned how to ride a horse from Mo Henian before, Shishi was still young after all. Murphy still trusted Yang Yi. "Why do you want him? Is your old man too old to lead a horse?" Mo Henian felt a sense of distrust and asked angrily with a glare. But in the end, Mo Henian still brought Yang Yi with him. They went to the stable together with Shishi. In the past, Mo Henian's farm didn't raise ponies. The horses that the cowboys rode were all adult horses. However, the price of horses had been rising in the past 2 years, so Mo Henian bought a batch of ponies to raise them and sell them for a good price. "Wow, so many horses. But Grandpa, why aren't there any ponies?" Cece walked into the very clean stable. She was both happy and scared. She held her father's hand tightly and looked at the tall horses in the pen one after another. Compared to her small stature, these horses were all very tall. "These are all ponies. They're only a little over a year old and haven't matured yet," Mo Henian explained. Yang Yi could tell that these horses were indeed still very small. From their appearance, they were one size smaller than adult horses. Their bodies were also thinner and weaker. They did not have the muscular feeling of adult horses. When someone arrived, these young ponies came over curiously. Shishi looked at these behemoths and held her father's hand, not daring to get close. However, Shishi soon saw her grandfather holding a long carrot and walking towards a yellow pony. The little girl's eyes widened. She was surprised to see the yellow pony snorting softly and coming over. It first sniffed, then opened its mouth and ate the carrot that her grandfather handed to it. Mo Henian stroked its forehead, but the yellow fat pony did not respond. It only cared about eating. "Is it fun?" Mo Henian turned around and smiled at Shishi. He encouraged, "Shishi, do you want to try too?" "But I'm scared. I'm scared that it will bite me." Shishi looked at the pony eating the carrot with envy, but the fear in her heart did not disappear. The current situation was that they did not know who was watching. A group of ponies gathered in front of the stable, breathing heavily as if they had smelled the carrot. They paced around restlessly. Although horses had poor eyesight, the way they raised their heads and looked at the humans was as if they were the spectators. Under Mo Henian's encouragement, Shishi finally mustered her courage. Holding a carrot, she walked towards a white pony. However, she wanted her father to hold her other hand. With her father by her side, she would have some confidence to approach these behemoths. Feeding a horse was a magical feeling, especially when this white pony used a pair of gentle and weak eyes to look at her. She felt her little heart pounding. She liked it a lot, but she was also a little scared. "Why is it looking at me? Does it like me too?" She mumbled softly. "That's right. It likes you too," Yang Yi said gently. The white pony opened its mouth and bit the carrot with its thick lips. Although they were far away, Shishi was still frightened and hurriedly dropped the carrot. Before the carrot fell out of the stable, the white pony had already caught it in its mouth. It ate it with relish. Papa, it ate the carrot I gave it. She did not feel regretful. Instead, she turned her head to look at her father happily. You try to touch it too? Yang Yi demonstrated. He gently touched the pony's forehead to encourage the little girl. She mustered her courage and timidly touched the big long face. However, there was no problem. The white pony chewed on the carrot, and did not forget the person who dug the well while drinking water. It even obediently came over, and let the little girl touch it. Wow. She did not know how to describe it. Her face was full of joy. The feeling of touching a pony was wonderful. She also felt a sense of accomplishment when she overcame her fear. At the same time, in California, in the OK City across the sea from San Francisco, several people carrying cameras approached a bearded man who had just gotten out of a car and was about to walk to his house. The person in the lead said, "Jermaine Lee, you need to start running away immediately." This was not a Chinese person. In the United States, Lee was also a relatively common surname. Jermaine Lee was also a white man. So sudden? The man who looked to be in his 40s was a little surprised. However, he did not waste any time. He quickly quickened his pace and ran home. At his house, his partner, Hill, was also notified. Hill was younger than Jermaine. He was Jermaine's relative and was temporarily living with Jermaine. You two have 1 hour. After 1 hour, the hunters will start chasing after you, the visitor said ruthlessly. Jermaine and Hill did not say anything. Before this, they already knew the rules of the game. So, they quickly packed up their things and said goodbye to their families. After that, Jermaine and Hill got into the car that they had prepared. With only one cameraman, they hurriedly left the OK City. Yes, it looked like they were running away. In fact, they were indeed running away. There was a hunter team made up of more than 30 experienced investigators from intelligence agencies, retired police officers, retired special forces, and other tracking experts. They would be tracking them down from every nook and cranny for the next 28 days. Of course, this was just an American reality show called Undercover Tracking. This show had just been designed, and this was only the first season of the show. It was different from the reality show that Yang Yi and the rest produced. The American reality show did not invite any celebrities. Instead, it was completely composed of ordinary people. So Jermaine and Hill were also ordinary people. Jermaine owned an escape room game shop. Hill was an ordinary university student. However, they would still try their best to fight against the professional hunters. This was because if they could escape from the hunters' pursuit in 28 days, they would also be rewarded with $250,000. They were not alone. Other than that, there were 8 other groups of fugitives. Everyone had started their escape journey. Of course, all of this seemed to have nothing to do with Yang Yi, who was far away on a small farm in Texas. Chapter 789. There were more than 20 ponies in Grandpa's stables, and more than 10 adult horses. She looked around and was dazzled by the choices. There were too many horses. Even though she only needed to pick ponies, it was still difficult to choose. Most of them were ponies with the common red hair. The difference in their hair color was relatively small. The main difference was the color of their faces and legs. Some of them had a white mark from their forehead to their nose. Some of them had a white gradient under their mouth and near their eyes. There were also some whose hooves were white. Apart from these horses, there were also dark ponies. They had black manes and tails, and their bodies were more brown. Grandpa, do these ponies often bask in the sun? She asked as she pointed at the dark ponies. Bask in the sun? They are often chased out by old Ford to move around and eat fresh grass. Emohenian didn't understand. He explained the details of raising ponies to Shishi. Shishi nodded as if she suddenly understood. She said innocently, "Then Grandpa, you have to put some sunscreen on them too. They're all tanned." Yang Yi, who was following behind the old man and Cece, finally understood. He couldn't help but laugh. Shishi was such a fool. She actually thought that the dark ponies were tanned by the red ponies in front. Emohenian also understood. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he rubbed Shishi's little head and said, "According to what you said, this pony is exposed to the sun every day?" Emohenian and Shishi pointed at the only dark pony at the back. This dark pony was covered in light black hair. Although it wasn't pure enough and the color wasn't shiny enough, in Yang Yi's eyes, this dark pony was still very handsome. It was low-key, reserved, and domineering. However, Emohenian still underestimated Shishi's ability to make connections. The young lady shook her head seriously. She pointed at the dark pony and said, "That's not it. It's a dark pony. He was the one who was tanned. Greg's dark too, but he's not tanned. He told me he's black." How could his daughter have such deep knowledge? Yang Yi was dumbfounded. In the end, Shishi still chose the white pony that she had fed the carrot to. Although it was a white horse, it was not completely white. There were still many black spots on its body. After all, purebred and pure-colored horses were too expensive. Emohenian would not waste money on horse fur. However, this white pony was exceptionally docile. It seemed to like Shishi, who fed it the carrot. When Shishi leaned over again, the little fellow moved its head closer again. It rubbed against Shishi while breathing heavily, as if it wanted to remember Shishi's scent. Horses are animals that smell and hear, but their eyesight is very bad. Shishi also liked its intimacy. She let go of the fear in her heart and giggled. She hugged the pony's head and patted it carefully. Yang Yi still felt a little regretful that his daughter did not choose the dark pony that he liked very much. Instead, she chose this ordinary-looking white pony. This morning, Shishi fed the white pony. She pulled the reins and led it for a stroll on the grassland with some shade beside the small forest. Although Old Ford had arranged for them to put a saddle on the white pony and let Shishi try to ride it for a few minutes, the white pony was not familiar with Shishi yet. Old Ford still wanted to be cautious and let Shishi build a deep friendship with the white pony first before slowly teaching Shishi how to ride. On the way back to his grandfather's villa, Emohenian did not follow them. He rode the pony to watch the cowboys work. Yang Yi held his daughter's hand alone and walked slowly with her. He asked, "What name did you give it?" Shishi had a lot of fun. This was a very new experience. The little girl was reluctant to leave her white pony and talked about it all the way. After hearing her father's question, Shishi thought for a while and said crisply, "I want to call it Little White because it's white. It's also very small. Papa, Little White is only 1 year old. It's about the same age as Little Brother. It's still a little different from Little Brother. The age of a horse is 6 years old for us humans." Yang Yi smiled and raised his eyebrows at Shishi. He said, "So Little White is actually about the same age as you?" Ah. Shishi was a little surprised, but she soon became happy again. "That's very good. Hee Papa, then I can play with Xiaobai. No wonder it likes me so much. Haha, because you're the same age." The incident of Yang Yi hitting a reporter caused a big disturbance in China. Because the impression that Yang Yi gave people before was still very perfect, coupled with the fact that he was brimming with talent, he also gave people the illusion of being cultured and refined. Because of this, people selectively forgot that Yang Yi was actually a tall and burly man. However, after this incident was exposed, Yang Yi in the photo had a solemn look on his face as he pushed the reporters away. The victim in the photo had a pained look on his face, which made Yang Yi's fierce side vividly displayed. It had to be said that this scared many young fans. Perhaps someone used the internet water army to add fuel to the fire and detailed Yang Yi's bad deeds. Phoebe Studios' micro-broadcast of clarification made the fans who believed in Yang Yi feel relieved. However, it could not change the passers-by's condemnation of Yang Yi. They did not want to watch it. Mo Xiaowan was remotely commanding in the United States. She asked the company's legal department to directly sue the newspaper that originally spread the rumor in court, and asked them to publish a clarification and an apology. However, this lawsuit would take time. Fortunately, the reporters who surrounded Yang Yi were not impenetrable. Someone saw an opportunity and found the famous Zhuozai Lu Yu in the paparazzi world. "This is the video I got. A reporter took it. Although it is a bit blurry, I can recognize that Mr. Yang did not hit anyone. He just protected his family and pushed the reporters away." Lu Yu contacted Mo Xiaowan. How are you going to deal with this matter? Mo Xiaowan did not know that Lu Yu was the teacher, but she knew that Lu Yu and Yang Yi had a hidden interest relationship. She thought about it and said, "You are an expert. How do you think we should deal with it? One is that you release the video yourself, and the other is that I expose it. However, I think the latter is better. This is not because I want to take advantage of Mr. Yang's popularity, but because my influence is bigger than your studio's micro-broadcast," Lu Yu said, "and I can buy Internet Water Army to help you hype up this matter." While clarifying, it can also reverse the direction of public opinion. It is not convenient for you to buy Internet Water Army. Okay, I'll leave this matter to you. Mo Xiaowan nodded and said, "By the way, someone is buying Internet Water Army to discredit Yang Yi and Murphy. If you have a way, try to help us check it out and see who has been making things difficult for us." Lu Yu smiled and said, "It is not easy to check this matter. The people who buy Internet Water Army will hide very well, but I will help to keep an eye on them. There will be a day when they will reveal themselves." Mo Xiaowan nodded and smiled. "Mr. Lu, I'll have to trouble you with this matter. How much do you need? I'll ask the finance department to transfer it to your account. Don't talk about money. Help Mr. Yang expose it, and I can also make money. Moreover, Mr. Yang is my benefactor. Talking about money is looking down on me, Lu Yu." Lu Yu waved his hand straightforwardly. Chapter 790. Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting had not been updated for a while. Some media speculated that Yang Yi was trying to avoid the limelight and handle this matter in a low-key manner. That was why he did not personally speak out about this matter. How could they know that Yang Yi was just busy going abroad and did not have time to update his micro-broadcasting? A few days after Mo Xiaowan and Lu Yu communicated, under Lu Yu's manipulation, the public opinion changed dramatically. There was a video that proved that Yang Yi did not hit anyone. It also proved that he pushed the reporters away just to protect his family. This made many onlookers switch sides and support Yang Yi's approach. To protect his wife and child, there's nothing wrong with beating up these unscrupulous reporters, let alone pushing them away. I'm very unhappy watching this. In this video, our little angel Shishi is squeezing beside her father's leg. These people kept crowding over and almost stepped on Shishi's foot. If it were me, I would beat them up too. Am I the only one who thinks that Yang Yi is very handsome? This is the first time I've seen him so strong. He pushed away 5 people alone, and the other party did not even have the ability to fight back. A person who can protect his wife and child is really too handsome. After the video was exposed, there were many passers-by who became fans. However, the public opinion on the internet quietly changed. People's attention on Yang Yi gradually decreased. The topic of discussion gradually turned to how to regulate the behavior of entertainment reporters. Although this discussion was meaningless, there were still many celebrities who quietly expressed their opinions. A few days later, when everyone thought that Yang Yi's storm had passed, in the middle of the night in China, Yang Yi quietly updated his micro-broadcasting again. "Hee, let me record this. Our old Yang family also has a valiant and formidable female knight today." Between the words, Yang Yi did not mention the previous storm of public opinion at all. He even showed a proud attitude of showing off his woman. Micro-broadcasting had several photos that were accumulated over the past few days. There was a photo of Shishi when she first arrived in the United States and walked around with her white pony. There was a photo of Shishi riding on the pony under the care of her grandfather and Grandpa Ford. There was also a photo of Yang Yi carrying Shishi on a tall pony. Of course, the best photo was taken by Yang Yi just now. After so many days of practice, Shishi had mastered the basic riding skills and had a tacit understanding with her white pony. In the photo, Shishi was wearing blue jeans and a pink t-shirt. Although she was not wearing a cowboy hat, she was still wearing the classic red cowboy scarf and had a long ponytail. She looked like a cool cowboy. In the photo taken by Yang Yi, Shishi was holding the reins and riding the white pony towards her father on the grassland. After Shishi's movie, The Fugitive, was released, although Yang Yi rarely posted photos of Shishi's front, if he did, he would not Photoshop Shishi's face. Therefore, this time, the handsome and charming cowboy girl in the photo revealed her delicate and beautiful little face. Shishi looked at her father and smiled brightly. This smile was like a touch of gentleness embellished on her valiant appearance. When these photos were posted by Yang Yi, the fans were instantly excited and started to comment. This is the benefit of the cultivation community. Instead of sleeping in the middle of the night, you can actually see my little angel, Shishi. Father-in-law, where did you kidnap my wife? She hasn't updated micro-broadcasting for so many days. Our Shishi is amazing. She even knows how to ride a horse. And looking at the last photo, she's riding quite well. Is she going to participate in the Olympic Games? My little knight? Great, Shishi is so beautiful no matter how she dresses up. She's so cool. I'm a girl, but I'm fascinated by Shishi. What should I do? Why are there foreigners in tour? They're dressed like cowboys. Did Shishi go abroad to play after graduating from kindergarten? Many fans were very curious about where Shishi learned to ride a horse. It had to be said that the power of the people was endless. The next day, before the media reacted, some fans dug up some news from the media when Yang Yi and Murphy got married. He took a screenshot and posted it in the comments. In addition to the foreigner in tour, the cool old cowboy in the photo with Shishi is Shishi's grandfather. He appeared at Yang Yi's wedding before. Some media outlets have revealed Mo Fei's background. Her mother was a small-time celebrity in Hong Kong. Her father was an architectural designer in California at that time, but later, according to Hong Kong media reports, it was said that he changed his career and bought a farm in Texas to be a farmer. With all this information, plus the fact that Yang Yi posted micro-broadcasting in the middle of the night, it's not difficult to speculate that Yang Yi and the others should be on vacation at his father-in-law's farm. It's not surprising that Shishi learned to ride a horse there. Besides, I have to say that old Master Mo is really cool. It's the first time I've seen an Asian dressed like a cowboy. Under this comment, a group of fans expressed that they wanted to kneel down to this master of deduction. He was able to dig up so much information. The media reports in China in recent years could indeed be found on the internet. However, the news that Zhou Mingyu's husband became a farmer was from more than 10 years ago. Moreover, it was from an inconspicuous tabloid. This person was indeed very resourceful to be able to find that information. In the domestic entertainment industry, people placed too much importance on the status of stars and overestimated their role as idols. In the words of many seniors, they were becoming more and more impetuous. Yang Yi's simple micro-broadcasting of Shishi's daily life could attract a lot of media attention and reports. However, at this time, another person who was also impetuous became more grounded. At the Beijing Film and Television base, Yang Huan and Ding Xiang were talking to an assistant director who had been invited by the group to talk about her playing a minor role. Yang Huan, can I call you Sister Huan? You're really making things difficult for me. The assistant director said with a wry smile. You're a big star, and you're playing a minor role. If others know, won't they scold me for being blind? It's not a minor role. Isn't it a special guest? Yang Huan said with a smile. Don't call me Sister Huan. I'm younger than you. But you're a big star. So what if I'm a big star? I'm not a big star. In the industry, I'm still a newbie. You're a senior, and I still need your guidance. Yang Huan said with a smile. Filming The Ultimate Challenge was indeed a good training. With a group of old foxes, as well as the cunning Zhu Jie and Guozi, Yang Huan's EQ had improved a lot. No, I really can't. I'll be scolded to death. The media will definitely report that we're using a great talent for nothing. Our director will also scold me, the assistant director said with a wry smile. How about I ask the management to give you a big role? However, it's not easy to change the roles now. No need to ask others to help me. I'll just shoot this minor role in one day. After that, I'll have to go to other places. It's such a good training, Yang Huan said with a smile. I'm in my first year in the acting department. I'll be in my second year soon. There's still a lot to learn. For a big role, I'll have to practice my acting skills first. Brother Wu, you can tell the director now, so that he'll know what to do. Ding Xiang saw that the assistant director was in a difficult position, so she suggested, if the media reports it, we'll clarify it for you and the crew. This is our own idea. Moreover, If the media reports that Yang Huan is playing a minor role, won't you attract a lot of attention? Sometimes, it's good to be scolded. People can't wait for the media to hype it up. Ding Xiang was getting more and more familiar with the rules of the entertainment industry. Her words were watertight, and the assistant director was tempted. He gritted his teeth and said, "All right. Do you really want this role? Let me tell you, Sister Huan, this role is a little sad." Sad is good. Yang Huan needs some special roles to practice her acting skills. Ding Xiang nodded. Chapter 791. Early in the morning, the sun had just driven away the green mist in the fields and illuminated the land. Next to the Mo family's barn, a girl with long hair wearing a headband ran past while giggling. Behind her was a Great Dane with long legs. The black cowboy, Greg, was arranging the hay drying in the open space beside the valley. When he saw Shishi running past, he grinned and called out, "Hey, good morning, my princess. Are you going to play with your pony so early in the morning?" Mo Henian was the proudest that Shishi had learned to ride a horse. These cowboys, who were like family, finally recognized Shishi. They no longer treated her as an ignorant little girl, but as their companion. Of course, they teasingly called Shishi a princess. "My princess." This was also a reflection of their closer relationship. "Greg, good morning. I'm going to say goodbye to Little White." Shishi stopped and politely greeted Greg. She had only been in America for less than a week, but the girl's spoken English and listening skills had improved by leaps and bounds. She could even communicate with the fast-talking black cowboys without any difficulty. "Goodbye? Are you going back to China? Aren't you going to play here for 2 months?" Greg was shocked and asked reluctantly. "Hee, Greg, you misunderstood. I'm just saying goodbye to Little White today, because I can't play with it today. Today is a girl's day. I'll come to see Little White tomorrow." Shishi explained for a while. What was a girl's day? Greg was a little confused, but he didn't want to ask too much. He was obviously not interested in this topic, so he shrugged and said, "Okay." After bidding farewell to Greg, Cece took the Great Dane and ran toward the stable with her long, slender legs. Her appearance caused some commotion in the stable. The stable was much emptier because most of the adult horses had been ridden out by the cowboys to herd cattle. The rest were basically ponies that couldn't work. They recognized the girl, who came every day recently, and gathered around. Unfortunately, Shishi's heart already belonged to someone else. The little girl ran straight to her white pony. Xiaobai, I'm here to see you." The white pony had also been waiting for a long time. It stuck its head out from the middle of the fence and lowered its head meekly. It rubbed its long forehead and cheeks against its little master, as if it was acting coquettishly. It made Shishi giggle. "Xiaobai, you can't go out to play today." Shishi hugged the white pony's head and smiled with her big eyes. "I'm going out to play with Grandma and Mom today. You have to be good at home." She even imitated her father's usual tone of exhortation. "All right. This carrot is for you." Shishi played with the white pony for a while, then turned around and took out a carrot from the plastic bucket on the side, and handed it to the pony. The white pony especially liked to eat carrots. Of course, all horses liked this sweet food. After it held the carrot in its mouth, its upper lip turned up, and its nose even puffed. Obviously, it was in a very good mood. As if they smelled the food, the other ponies snorted and paced around anxiously. When Cece saw this scene, the kind little girl's heart softened. She struggled to lift the plastic bucket and fed the carrots to the other ponies while muttering in a low voice, "Well, these are for you guys too. Be good and listen to me." Shishi, who went to feed the ponies early in the morning, returned home just in time to wait for her grandfather, who had finished his work, to come back. Everyone had breakfast together. "I just met Baraya. He said that we will form a team and go hunting in the forest in the west in a few days." Mo Henian grabbed a big piece of cake and said excitedly, "In the past 2 years, the number of wolves in our state has increased rapidly, which has a great impact on the rare species in the forest. The Department of Natural Resources has issued a notice that we are allowed to hunt coyotes freely. If there are more of them, when there is nothing to eat in winter, I'm afraid they will come to the farm to harm us." As Mo Henian said, he turned his head to look at Yang Yi and raised his eyebrows. Young Yi, when the time comes, do you want to come with us to broaden your horizons? You won't be afraid, right? Oh, the old man's tone had a hint of provocation, as if he was worried that Yang Yi would shrink back. Papa, don't go, okay? You are old. Can't you just let Uncle Ford and the others go? Murphy, who was on the side, advised somewhat unhappily. Hunting is not dangerous. We have horses, dogs, and guns. More than a dozen people. How can we be afraid of a few wolves? Emohenian waved his hand. It's okay, I'll go. Yang Yi smiled. He patted Murphy's hand and comforted her. With me here, Dad won't be in danger. Murphy knew that Yang Yi's skills were extraordinary. She grabbed Yang Yi's hand and said somewhat worriedly, but this is a gun. I'm afraid that there will be a misfire. You guys still have to be careful, even more careful. It's okay if you can't catch the wolves, safety first. Hey, what are you talking about? Emohenian was very unhappy with Yang Yi's words. He swallowed the biscuit in his mouth and said angrily, I still need you to protect me? You haven't been in the army for so many years. I'm afraid that you don't even know how to hold a gun. I'm afraid that us old men still have to protect you. Speaking so arrogantly. Yang Yi smiled and did not talk back to his father-in-law. Don't try to be brave. How old are you already? You always rush to be the first to do anything. Zhou Mingyu also said a few words. As for Yang Yi's side, let Ford help take care of him. Mom, thank you for your concern. Yang Yi said with a smile. Zhou Mingyu and Yang Yi's parents were not like Dong Yue's parents. Dong Yue was the one who kept Yang Chonggui's word at home, but Zhou Mingyu could not be tough. Sometimes, no one could persuade Emohenian's stubbornness. Sitting at the table, she kept blinking her big eyes. She was eating breakfast while listening to their conversation. Finally, she found a chance to interject. Papa, can I go play with you guys? I can ride Xiao Bai and go together. The little girl asked expectantly. No. This time, the four adults shouted in unison. Emohenian said even more seriously. How old are you? You want to run around with adults and stay at home. Of course, the old man felt that his tone was a little harsh. He pretended to be relaxed and said, Of course you can still play with your grandfather today. We'll take Xiao Bai to see Nyo, okay? No. Zhou Mingyu smiled and said, Today is Girls' Day. We'll take Shishi and Mommy with us. Again? Where are you going? Emohenian originally did not care about these women's affairs, but he was a little unhappy that his precious granddaughter was taken away. We're going to Nyo City to buy clothes, bags, shoes, and so on. Zhou Mingyu took Shishi's hand and said with a smile. You don't want to know. Shishi also giggled. Following her fashionable grandmother, she would have beautiful clothes to wear. After all, Shishi was a girl. Of course she would like it. Their wives and children all set off to play. Yang Yi and his father-in-law looked at each other in a daze. For a moment, they did not know how to get along with each other. Cough. Papa, their Girls' Day. It's also a men's day. Yang Yi smiled awkwardly and said, So what's the plan for today? Emohenian touched the beard on his chin. Thinking of the conversation just now, he snorted and said, We'll go hunting in a few days. I'll take you to play with guns and familiarize yourself with them. Don't embarrass me then. Chapter 792. Should he show some real skills to his father-in-law? That way he wouldn't be underestimating him. Sitting in Emohenian's jeep, Yang Yi pondered in his heart. What kind of guns did you play with in the army? Rifles? Pistols? Or a machine gun? Emohenian asked casually. They were heading to the shooting range of the biggest gun club in Big Grassland Town. There were more types of guns than gun shops and supermarkets, and they could experience shooting different types of guns. I've played with all of them, Yang Yi answered simply. When he was in Battle Wolf, his predecessor had even trained with heavy machine guns on tanks and even artillery shells. Emohenian's question was too childish. Of course Yang Yi thought it through. He didn't show off in front of his father-in-law. If he showed his qualifications, Emohenian would know that he wasn't an ordinary retired soldier, and he wasn't a pushover. However, there didn't seem to be any benefits in slapping his father-in-law's face. When they arrived at the shooting range, Yang Yi realized that this shooting range was a little interesting. One part of the shooting range was indoors, and they had to wear headphones to shoot. Another part of the shooting range was built in the wide and open countryside. Not only could they shoot target paper, but they could also shoot various objects, bottles, apples, and so on. Mo Henian was obviously a regular at this gun club. When he came in, the manager greeted him warmly. At the door, there were a few fashionable old men in shorts and polo shirts shouting, "Mo, your cows." These fashionable old men looked like they had just come back from playing golf. They chatted with Mo Henian cheerfully. Originally, they had played enough and were ready to go back. Now that they saw Mo Henian, they put their arms around each other's shoulders and excitedly prepared to go back for another 500 rounds. Originally, Yang Yi thought that these old men were like Beria and Mo Henian, farmers nearby. However, when Mo Henian introduced them to him, Yang Yi found out that they lived in town and did different businesses. Some ran supermarkets, some ran bars, and some sold cattle and sheep. However, they mainly did it in the nearby Arlington city. Pick a gun and see what you want to play with. Mo Henian's face was cold, but his heart was warm. He didn't neglect his son-in-law just because he saw his friend. He handed over the gun list and showed it to Yang Yi. Pick one to practice first. You can change later if you want to try something else. The names of the guns in this world were very different from those in Yang Yi's previous world. Yang Yi took a few glances and picked an automatic rifle that looked like an M16. As Yang Yi was a newcomer, he couldn't use the gun on his own. An instructor came over to teach him how to use the rifle, as well as some rules to follow in the outdoor and indoor shooting ranges. The old men didn't play by themselves. They were chatting on the side and watching Yang Yi, the rookie, being trained with relish. Mo, I thought your daughter would marry an American. I didn't expect her to marry a Chinese. This brat is so lucky. I think he's all right. As far as I know, there aren't many in China who are as tall as him. Oh right, Mo, I heard your daughter is a celebrity in China? As the old men chatted, Yang Yi patiently listened to the instructor's instructions. He didn't tell the instructor that he actually understood everything. After all, this was a whole new world. It was more meaningful to watch someone else's demonstration to make sure he didn't misunderstand or make any mistakes than to rush to show off. You can try it with me. The pot-bellied middle-aged instructor nodded at Yang Yi. Yang Yi finally picked up the black rifle. The slightly worn texture on the gun gave Yang Yi a wonderful touch. The cold feeling also made Yang Yi a little absent-minded. It was as if his spirit had traveled through two different worlds. Pick up a gun. What do you need to do? The instructor saw that Yang Yi was in a daze and thought that he didn't know how to use the gun, so he reminded him. Yang Yi came back to his senses. He smiled slightly and his hands began to move. Yang Yi pulled the handle of the gun with familiarity and checked it. A series of complicated operations were completed smoothly. Then he inserted the magazine. Kacha, a soft sound was heard, as if it was a starting gun. Suddenly, Yang Yi felt that the sounds of the whole world became clear. He could acutely perceive the movements around him, the positions of the old men who were talking, walking, smoking, and the positions of the gunmen in the distance. He was completely in combat mode. It was as if he could immediately choose the right target to shoot if a criminal appeared. The instructor originally thought that Yang Yi would need to train for a while before he could understand how to use the gun. However, now that he saw Yang Yi's skillful operation, he swallowed back the words he wanted to say. You know guns? The instructor said, somewhat speechless. Fire a few shots for me to see? I don't think you need any more training. Where should I shoot? Yang Yi asked. 100-meter target, A8. The instructor pointed to a target in the distance. Yang Yi followed the instructor's instructions and walked to the A8 position. He gently pushed up the safety device, which was the fast and slow trigger, and selected the single-shot mode. Then he skillfully leaned the butt of the gun against his shoulder, tilted his head, aimed, and fired. Bang! The gunshot interrupted the old men's conversation. They all looked over. They've started shooting so soon. How's the result? Mo Henian was also curious. He followed his friends and walked toward his son-in-law and the instructor. Now the target paper in the shooting range was changed electronically. Moreover, there were cameras that could check the bullet traces. The instructor quickly brought up the A8 target paper on the display beside him. Yang Yi's bullet hit the bottom left of the target paper. It was still some distance away from the bullseye. However, the bullet didn't miss the target. This made the old men laugh and clap. Not bad. You're already so good at your first shot. Keep up the good work. Emohenian encouraged. In fact, he was very satisfied with his son-in-law's performance. To be able to hit the target paper, he could boast to his friends about Yang Yi's talent. Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In fact, he wasn't completely familiar with the gun. The first shot was just a test. He wanted to see the gun's recoil, the bullet's shooting speed, and the degree of drop. Now he had the basic concept in his heart. He silently counted some corrected data, and fired another shot at the target paper in the distance. The bullet hit the top right of the bullseye. It was still a little off, but this time the distance to the bullseye was much shorter. After 2 tests, Yang Yi had already figured out the gun's performance. However, no one watched his performance. The instructor saw that he was already very familiar with the gun. He gave a box of bullets to Yang Yi and went to check on the other people in the shooting range. Meanwhile, Emohenian and his friends were chatting. They felt that just watching wasn't enough. Under someone's suggestion, they took a double-barreled shotgun and went to shoot a flying saucer. Yang Yi changed to a 200-meter target. However, he still shot while standing and easily hit a few bullseye. Unfortunately, no one saw his good results. Yang Yi didn't mind. He also came to have fun. To Yang Yi, guns were just a simple skill. In comparison, he preferred cold weapons for assassination in his previous life. However, when Yang Yi was practicing, something happened on his father-in-law's side. Emo, how about we make a bet? 3 old farm owners walked over. The one in the lead had a cigar in his mouth. He laughed and said, "You have to give me a chance. I've liked your Remington for a long time." Chapter 793. The 3 newly arrived old men were also the farm owners of this grassland town. The one with the cigar in his mouth was called Doug, and he owned the largest farm in the town. The one on his left was called Craven, and his farm mainly grew fruits. Of course, it was also the area closest to the forest. The one on his right was called Stuart, and other than owning a farm, he also had other cattle and sheep businesses. Stuart and a good friend of Emohenian's could be considered competitors, so they were egging each other on. Although they were talking and laughing, it was still a little tense. Yang Yi handed the rifle in his hand to the shooting range manager, and went over to watch the show. When Yang Yi came over, the hot-tempered and easily provoked Emohenian had already discussed with the other party. The old man was twisting his arms and preparing himself. "Gentlemen, what's the situation?" Yang Yi whispered to the others. Nelson, who owned the bar, smiled and said, Emo accepted their bet. "Do you see those target-throwing machines? Later, 2 targets will be thrown out each time. Each round will be thrown 5 times, and it will be 3 rounds. Whoever wins the most will be the winner." Double-directional flying saucers, that's a big bet. I don't think anyone can hit 2 targets at once, right? An old man beside him shook his head. Stuart hit it before. It happened last week. I don't know if it's true or not. Anyway, I've never seen him hit it before. If it's true, then this guy is really lucky. Another old man said. It's okay, your father-in-law won't lose out in terms of the bet. Nelson patted Yang Yi's shoulder and said excitedly, "Your father-in-law bet an antique gun, but Doug bet his favorite sports car. In terms of price, Doug bet twice as much. Doug's car is beautiful." An old man beside him was drooling. "That color, that streamlined body, it's like a burning cloud. You can't trap a wolf without risking your child. If Emo can win, we can borrow it to drive in the future. Doug is a stingy guy, but Emo is much more generous." Yang Yi interrupted their daydreaming and asked anxiously, "Hey Nelson, how are we going to compete in this competition? Doug's side seems to have all 3 of them going up. Is my father-in-law going to do it himself?" "There are 3 rounds and they'll take turns. Actually, their marksmanship is about the same. It's just for fun," Nielsen explained. "Emo can send someone else, but he wants to compete by himself." While they were talking, Emohinian had already checked his hunting rifle. He had a bag of bullets on his waist, and even took off his sunglasses. He walked valiantly to the edge of the outdoor field, and looked provocatively at Doug, who was walking up with a cigar in his mouth. Doug, it's not too late for you to regret it now. Hee hee, the one who will regret it is you. Doug held the cigar between his fingers. A bodyguard beside him brought over a shelf, and placed it on top. Then he took out his own double-barreled shotgun and loaded it with 2 shotgun shells. The 2 childish old men spat at each other for a while, until the coach at the side of the field shouted for them to get ready. Only then did they seriously hold the shotguns in their hands. The first shot was fired by Doug. 2 flying saucers flew out of the target trench. Their distance, height, and direction were all different. Doug fired 2 consecutive shots. The first shot hit one of the flying saucers, causing a cloud of pink powder to explode in the air. The second shot missed. Yang Yi watched from behind. He had a rough idea of what was going on. With Doug Ge's slow reaction speed, it was impossible for him to hit the second flying saucer. After he fired the first shot, the second shot was hurried and did not hit the second flying saucer. Flying saucer shooting used shotgun shells. The flying saucer target could fly a distance of about 70 meters, but the bullet's optimal hit distance was less than half. Therefore, one's reaction speed had to be fast. One had to shoot the flying saucer within a few tenths of a second to not let the flying saucer get too far away. Yang Yi had never played this game in his previous life. However, he had watched competitions on TV and knew how to play this game. However, even though Doug Ge's skill level seemed amateur to Yang Yi, Nielsen said worriedly, Doug, your hands are pretty good today. You hit it on the first shot. Yang Yi was stunned and looked at them. It seems like they were playing just now. They must have practiced for a while. An old man beside him said, These guys must know that Emo hasn't practiced. As he spoke, Emohinian fired his first shot. Bang bang. Only the sound of gunshots was heard. There was no movement. Emo, looks like you can't do it. Are you going to lose your Remington to me? T. That was just a mistake. I'll show you how I hit a double yoke later. The 2 of them started to trash talk again. Emohinian was not at a disadvantage at all. Of course, Yang Yi also knew that it was impossible for his father-in-law to hit 2 targets at the same time with his reaction speed unless he was blindly guessing. Both of them still had 4 shots to shoot. Doug missed the next shot. He was probably a little excited. Emohinian still could not hit the target. On the 3rd shot, Emohinian finally hit a shot. However, Doug also hit it. Not good. Doug has a good feel today. An old man muttered. Yang Yi was anxious as he watched from the side. He hoped that his father-in-law could put in more effort. Winning or losing was not important. He could not lose his dignity. However, Emohinian missed the 4th shot. Doug still hit a flying saucer steadily. Emo, you've already lost. Doug smiled proudly. Who said I've lost? Emohinian said angrily. There's still 1 more round. If I can hit 2 flying saucers, I'll be able to catch up. It'll be a tie. That's impossible. Let's wait and see. It was indeed impossible. Emohinian could not hit 2 multi-directional flying saucers. Although Doug didn't hit the flying saucer in this round, Emohinian still didn't hit a single shot. He was too impatient and missed his first shot. He didn't follow up with his second shot. He lost this round. Don't be anxious. Haha, you still have 2 more chances to turn the tables. Old Daogu was also a childish ghost. He smugly patted Emohinian's shoulder. Seeing Emohinian's displeased expression, he felt very refreshed in his heart. It seemed that the shotgun that he had been eyeing for a long time could be lured over. Emohinian was indeed unhappy. Losing 3. 1 was a little too much. However, the old man did not break down. When he came back, he bragged to Nielsen and the other old men. It's okay. It's okay. I didn't feel good in that round. I'll definitely win the next round. However, Yang Yi could see that his father-in-law was anxious. While he waited for the manager to change the target, he kept clenching his fist or wiping the shotgun in his hand. Dad, why don't you let me go? You might feel a little cold today, but I feel very hot. Yang Yi went over and whispered to Emohenian in Chinese with a smile. I'll fight the next 2 rounds for you. I guarantee you'll win. You've played with this thing before? Emohenian looked at Yang Yi suspiciously. If Yang Yi had performed well in the previous round, he could still understand that Yang Yi had been in the army before and had some foundation. However, he did not think that Yang Yi had practiced flying saucer shooting when he was in the army, which army was still equipped with shotguns. It seemed that other than some troops in the United States, there was no other country that used a shotgun that had a short range and could easily injure their own people. Yang Yi lied through his teeth. There is. I have a friend in China who runs this shooting range in Magic City. I've played with him before. I'm not bragging to you, but I'm really talented in this. Emohenian was skeptical. However, his son-in-law volunteered to share the burden with him. Emohenian felt warm in his heart. In addition, he did not feel good today and was not confident. Therefore, he did not insist and nodded lightly. Dugge, my son-in-law will compete in the next round for me. Emohenian said to Dugge and the rest with his arm around Yang Yi's shoulder and his head held high. Your son-in-law. Dugge had not officially met this Asian young man beside Emohenian. However, he did not think that Yang Yi could be that good. He laughed proudly. Haha, sure. Any one of you can go. Chapter 794. In America, many people look down on yellow-skinned people and look down on the weak Chinese people. Emohenian, on the other hand, was respected by these people because of his fiery temper and playful cowboy personality. Although Doug was trash-talking to Emohenian and talking about Emohenian's antique gun, he did not look down on Emohenian. At least when he spoke to him, he maintained the attitude of being on equal footing. If it was not for the fact that he could not handle it, Doug might even call Emohenian his brother. This was rare, because Doug only recognized Emohenian as an yellow-skinned person. When he saw Yang Yi, he did not even look at this young yellow-skinned person. Before he analyzed the situation rationally, he already did not take Yang Yi seriously. When Yang Yi and Craven were preparing for the second round of the competition, Doug was still teasing Emohenian, saying that he was too cowardly to find a young boy to replace him. Behind them, Nelson and the few old men were also discussing when they saw Yang Yi replacing Emohenian. He asked his son-in-law to fight. Could it be that he has some hidden trump card? Young is not bad. I like this young man. I hope he can win back my flaming cloud. What do you mean by your flaming cloud? We don't know if he can win or not. I've never seen him fight a flying saucer before. He was just asking about the rules. Why did Emo ask him to fight Craven? Craven is not that strong. For this kind of double-directional flying saucer, he can only hit 2 out of 5. If Emo went himself, he might have a higher chance of winning. An old man said doubtfully. Nelson's gaze fell on Emohenian, who was frowning at Yang Yi. He guessed. Emo probably wants to take care of his son-in-law. It's the first time a young man fights a flying saucer. Giving him a weak opponent will save him from losing too badly. Nelson did not know that he had guessed part of Emohenian's thoughts correctly. Yang Yi did not know either. Although his father-in-law was usually fierce, he was still thinking about him in his heart. If Emohenian was stubborn, he definitely wouldn't be willing to let Yang Yi have Craven, an opponent that he had a higher chance of winning. However, winning or losing the competition was not important. No matter how valuable an antique gun was, it was only about $100,000. Emohenian did not want to dampen Yang Yi's enthusiasm. He also wanted to believe in Yang Yi. Get ready, the referee shouted from the sidelines. Unlike Emohenian and Daoge, Yang Yi, who was the first to shoot, did not hold the gun in a standard horizontal position. The butt of the gun was close to his armpit so that he could fire against his shoulder at any time. Yang Yi did not have this habit. He held the gun in a relaxed manner, and the muzzle was tilted downward. He stood straight and looked in the direction of the target throwing machine in the middle of the field. 2 flying saucers were quietly thrown out. At this moment, Yang Yi's eyes became sharp. In an instant, he was ready to shoot. He placed the butt of the gun against his shoulder and pulled the trigger. Bang bang. First shot, muzzle flick, second shot. His posture was very handsome. However, there was no pink powder in the air. It was a little awkward. He missed both shots. "Young man, I'll teach you how to use a gun." Craven, who replaced him, seemed to think that Yang Yi was a rookie. He proudly fired 2 shots, and actually hit one of them. This was indeed a pleasant surprise for the fat white Craven, whose marksmanship wasn't too accurate. Craven's luck is too good," the old man said regretfully. "Yang Yi is in a bit of trouble." Nelson looked at Yang Yi worriedly. "It's your turn." Craven chuckled as he walked past Yang Yi. Yang Yi did not talk trash. He stood calmly at the side. Just now he almost hit the target. It was just that he missed by a little. Especially the first shot. He could feel that the range of the bullet was very close to hitting the flying saucer. This shotgun was a shotgun after all. The recoil was very strong. It was Yang Yi's first time coming into contact with a shotgun in this world. He had not gotten used to it yet. The recoil from the first shot also affected the speed of his second shot. The muzzle had already turned, but the firing was a little slower. Luckily, the 2 shots just now allowed Yang Yi to understand the situation of the gun and know how to adjust it. Of course, he could find an excuse for not hitting the target. However, Yang Yi was still a little unhappy. He was an assassin in his previous life. In this life, he was still a special forces soldier. It was too embarrassing for him to fall behind a normal person. This time, Yang Yi would not allow himself to miss again. Yang Yi was still standing with the gun in his hand. His expression was a little serious. However, at this time, a familiar shout came from behind him. "Come on, don't be nervous. You can do it." Yang Yi was stunned. He turned around and looked at Imohenian, who was smiling and clenching his fist. His father-in-law was actually cheering him on. Yang Yi nodded lightly. When he turned his head back, he became even more spirited, and his eyes became especially stern. This time, Yang Yi was really serious. Fire! The 2 flying saucers flew out in different directions and at different angles. Yang Yi's gaze was firmly fixed on them. He also raised his gun in an instant. Bang bang! 2 balls of pink powder exploded in the air. Yang Yi, on the other hand, only glanced at it lightly. He casually opened the chamber and threw away the 2 cartridges. Then he turned around and walked back to Imohenian's side. This series of movements was extremely natural and unrestrained. Oh! Only then did the old men react and exclaim in surprise. Nelson also exclaimed with a face full of surprise. "Perfect! It was a perfect hit." On the other side, Doug and the others were dumbfounded. They were dumbstruck and could not believe their eyes. The commotion here also attracted the attention of some customers, and even a few coaches. They came over and asked curiously. "This young man, he hit the double flying saucer perfectly just now," an old man excitedly introduced to the onlookers. "Really? That's amazing. It was not easy to hit 2 flying saucers at once. In the shooting range, one might only see it once every few days. Even these few old men had never been so lucky before. Therefore, everyone was discussing and waiting expectantly for Yang Yi's next shot. As for Craven, this guy was under a lot of pressure. His 2 shots had missed, and he had been ignored by everyone. On Yang Yi's side, he did not see the old master's surprised expression. Perhaps Mohenian was still a little reserved, but the old master nodded somewhat arrogantly and pretended not to care as he commented, "Not bad, keep up the good work." Then keep up the good work. The 3rd time, Yang Yi hit the 2 flying saucers steadily. 2 balls of pink powder exploded in the air like 2 blooming flowers. The onlookers were amazed. "Who is this young man? He's so strong. 2 perfect hits in a row. This is not luck. Let's see if he can hit again next time." After the shot, the onlookers began to discuss again. Craven still missed in this round. He was under too much pressure. After the shot, he regretfully shook his head. He knew his own level. First, he helplessly looked at Doug. Then, he carried his shotgun and shook hands with Yang Yi, taking the initiative to admit defeat. "Child, you're very strong. Really strong." Craven shrugged and said, "There's no need for the next 2 rounds. I can't be like you and hit 2 perfect hits in a row." "You're very strong too. You gave me a lot of pressure," Yang Yi politely said. However, the onlookers were not happy. "Finish the shot. Craven, if you don't want to shoot, Let this kid finish. We still want to see his amazing performance. It's okay, we still have one more round. Doug came out to smooth things over. He pointed at Stuart and said, Stuart will fight with him later. Stuart smiled bitterly at the side. He had indeed hit a perfect shot a few days ago, but that was just luck. Now, looking at Yang Yi's shooting posture and speed, he knew that he had encountered an expert and didn't have much of a chance of winning. However, cowboys would never back down so easily. Stuart wasn't as gutless as that fatty craven. He clenched his teeth and finished 5 sets of shooting with Yang Yi. There was no suspense in the result. Stuart hit 4 flying saucers. He did not create a miracle. On the other hand, Yang Yi shot 5 sets of shots. 4 of them were perfect hits. One set had a small mistake and only hit one target. Mistakes were very normal. Even Olympic athletes would not dare to say that they could hit a flying saucer with every shot. Even so, this frightening hit rate was enough to make the spectators mesmerized. 2 pink flowers bloomed in the air consecutively. It was too shocking. The only pity is that Yang's opponent is not strong enough. Stuart is like a baby in front of him. He's being abused too badly. Nelson laughed. Now his heart was filled with pride. It was as if he was Yang Yi's father-in-law who had won the competition instead of Mo Henian. Hee. Doug is going to die of depression. He lost his car this time. An old man rubbed his fists. Burning clouds. I want to borrow it first. Don't fight with me. On Yang Yi's side, he handed the shotgun to Mo Henian. At this moment, he saw Mo Henian's gratified expression. Although the old man did not know how to express his approval of his son-in-law, his expression and attitude had changed greatly. Not bad. Mo Henian patted Yang Yi's shoulder affectionately. At this time, Doug shook his head and walked over with his car keys. Mo, my sports car is yours. Doug was more generous. He threw the keys to Mo Henian and looked at Yang Yi with a smile. He asked Mo Henian, but I have a question. You have to tell me, who is this son-in-law of yours? He's so good with guns. Is he an athlete from the Chinese national team? No, he's not an athlete. Haha, Yang Yi, tell him where you're from. Mo Henian said proudly in front of Doug Ge. Doug Ge looked at Yang Yi. Where did he come from? This question was worth considering. Yang Yi put away the smile on his face. He puffed out his chest, put his legs together, and gave a military salute. He said to Doug Ge with a serious face, Sir, I'm a retired soldier from the People's XXX Army of China. Chapter 795. While Yang Yi was showing off his prowess at the shooting range, Shishi was shopping with her mother and grandmother in a big shopping mall in Xianyo City. They were going in and out of the top women's clothing stores. Now they were choosing clothes for Shishi in a children's clothing store that could be catwalked in Milan Fashion Week. Shishi doesn't have to wear a skirt to look good. Zhou Mingyu smiled and took a pair of jeans that looked very loose from the shelf. She gestured in front of Shishi and said, Shishi should look good in this. It can show off the advantage of her long legs. Murphy pushed the stroller to the side and asked, Isn't this trouser a little wide? Wide trouser legs are a style that has become popular again in recent years. Especially when women wear them, they will look taller and thinner, and they will look more elegant. Everyone says that you sing all day and don't care about fashion. You can't keep up with the trend, right? Zhou Mingyu smiled and said, This is good and the size is just right. Shishi, change into it and wear it for grandma. Okay. Shishi happily ran into the fitting room with the clothes. Of course, Zhou Mingyu followed and helped her adjust the corner of the clothes. After a while, Zhou Mingyu pulled Cici, who had changed her clothes, out of the fitting room. Zhou Mingyu, with a bright smile, waved her hand beside Cici and showed Mo Fei that her granddaughter's style had changed greatly. The little girl was still wearing the original short-sleeve t-shirt, but she had changed into a pair of jeans with wide trousers. The loose dark blue trousers could almost fit 3 or 4 of Shishi's slender legs, but on Shishi, it didn't look sloppy. Instead, it looked very neat, and it added a lazy and elegant temperament. Because of the high waist, the trousers looked very long, but the size seemed to be more suitable. Shishi could even reveal a small part of her ankle. This kind of wide-legged trousers could make Shishi look even more slender, as if there were legs under her neck. Not bad. Grandma has good taste, Murphy praised with a smile. Shishi, you suddenly look handsome. When Shishi heard her mother say that she was good-looking, she happily grabbed both sides of her trousers and twisted them to show off her wing-like trousers. She didn't forget to tell her mom about her discovery. Hee hee, Mom, look, there are 2 pockets here. It's very big and can store a lot of things. You can't put things in your pockets. Shishi, do you know why we girls always carry a bag when we go out? Zhou Mingyu pointed at the leopard print bag she was carrying and asked seriously. Why? Shishi blinked her big eyes and asked with some confusion. Do we have to carry a lot of things? Of course not. We carry bags because they look good, just like necklaces, hair ribbons, sunglasses, and other accessories. They can be matched with our clothes and shoes. A girl without a bag is not complete. Only with a bag can we be safe and beautiful without any flaws. Zhou Mingyu spread out her 2 fingers and said with a bewitching voice. Mom, what do you mean by this and putting things in your trouser pockets? Murphy asked, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Murphy was actually a woman who knew how to dress up, but compared to Zhou Mingyu, her life was not exquisite enough. Of course it's related. Since we carry bags, why do we have to put things in our pockets? After putting things in our pockets, they will bulge out. Do they look good? Zhou Mingyu raised her eyebrows proudly. Shishi was confused, but she still remembered what her grandmother had said. A girl without a bag is not complete. But Grandma, I don't have a bag. I have a school bag, can I? My papa bought a school bag for me to go to school. Shishi asked worriedly. How can a school bag be compared with a bag? A bag is a bag. Zhou Mingyu snapped her fingers and said with a smile, Shishi, it's okay if you don't have a bag now. Come shopping with Grandma today, and Grandma will pick the most beautiful bag for you that can match your trousers the best. Little Momo sat in the pram, leaning on the guardrail as he looked around curiously. The mall was cool and comfortable, spacious and bright. There were also colorful clothes and decorations. It was a dazzling array of things that made the little guy dizzy. Tong Tong was still young, after all, so he was not tired at all while being pushed by his mother in the pram. Instead, he seemed to be having fun. She wondered if he would be scared and run away when he heard his mother and grandmother talk about shopping when he grew up. After Zhou Mingyu bought a matching bag and shoes for Shishi, Murphy took her card to pay the bill. Originally, Zhou Mingyu wanted to pay the bill, but she couldn't persuade Murphy. Murphy said that it was impossible for her to spend her parents' money. Therefore, he simply let Mofei pay for all the expenses today. Zhou Mingyu stood aside and watched Murphy pay with her black gold-plated credit card and sign her name. She asked curiously, You got this card in China, right? What's the limit? Is it enough for today? Limit? Let me think. This card was given to me by Yang Yi. I think it's 5 million yuan, but I don't remember the exact amount. I don't usually spend much, and at most, I buy some clothes. Murphy thought for a while and said to her mother. Although they were talking in front of the shop assistant, they were talking in Cantonese, so they didn't have to worry about being overheard by the white girls. 5 million yuan? Zhou Mingyu looked at Murphy in surprise. The unit is RMB, which is less than 1 million yuan. Murphy thought that her mother had misunderstood. That's not a small amount. Zhou Mingyu pondered and said. Isn't Yang Yi a novel writer? How could he give you such a high-limit credit card? To have such a high limit, he must have at least a few 100 million yuan. He should have some, right? Murphy smiled and said. I heard from Yang Yi that he bought a large piece of land with a friend to build an amusement park for Shishi. It seems that he spent 500 to 600 million yuan. Yang Yi didn't hide it from Murphy, but Murphy didn't pay attention to it. She wasn't interested in these things. Where did he get so much money? Zhou Mingyu gasped. He started a company. He has several internet companies, I forgot which ones. It seems that he also has shares in an online shopping website. But he let others manage it, and he provides ideas. I think it's good. Murphy smiled and said. How come you don't know anything? You don't remember anything? You have to ask him. I don't remember. Why would I ask Yang Yi these things? It's boring. Murphy shook her head. Zhou Mingyu was speechless for a while. She said resentfully, "Other women control the financial power of the family. You, on the other hand, don't know how much money the family has, and you don't have any interest in knowing. You'll suffer in the future, daughter." "Mom, you also don't control Papa's finances, right?" Murphy shook Zhou Mingyu's hand and smiled. "Aren't you two very good? What's the matter?" "Your father is different. Although he has a bad temper, he is very down-to-earth. Moreover, he doesn't have much money. He invested all his spare money in the farm. I don't worry that he will take the money and spend it on wine and women." Zhou Mingyu pulled Murphy to the side and sat down. She avoided Shishi and whispered, "But Yang Yi is different. After all, we don't know him. Men become bad when they have money. If you don't want money, what if he gives the money to other women?" "Mom, you really don't have to worry about this," Murphy said coquettishly. "Yang Yi is not such a person. Moreover, he has no concept of money. Although he has made a lot of money, he has not become extravagant. I live with him, how can I not know his character? He stays with me every day, gets up early every day to buy groceries and cook for me and the children. If he goes on a business trip to another city, if he can take us with him, he will not go alone. She will pester him. In such a situation, how can he have other women?" Zhou Mingyu was silent. In fact, Zhou Mingyu didn't need to listen to Murphy's words. Now, when she saw the happy smile on Murphy's face, Zhou Mingyu already understood. However, the more Murphy said, the happier she became. She smiled and said, "If you want to say that he gives the money to other women, there is one." "Who?" Zhou Mingyu asked in surprise. Murphy pouted in the direction of Shishi and said with a smile, "Shishi. In order to build the amusement park for Shishi, he spent hundreds of millions. It is said that he will spend more in the future." Zhou Mingyu was speechless. "You are jealous of your daughter." He don't say that. Now that you mention it, I am really a little jealous." Murphy laughed. Chapter 796. Seeing her daughter so happy, Zhou Mingyu was both gratified and a little worried. "All right, as long as you're happy. I just hope you'll be more careful. Men, especially men with talent and status like Yang Yi, are the easiest to attract the covetous eyes of those crazy bees and butterflies. You must always be on your guard." Just as the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law were talking about the art of controlling one's husband, the relationship between Yang Yi and Mo Henian improved by leaps and bounds at the shooting range. Surprised by the strength of the Chinese army's ordinary soldiers, Doug and the others were willing to admit defeat. After handing over the car and leaving, Yang Yi accompanied the old man to continue playing with guns at the shooting range. The two of them even played with light sniper rifles. Yang Yi did not show off his superhuman shooting skills again. He just accompanied Mo Henian, played with his father-in-law, and chatted with him. "Those things in the army are over. I've been retired for 7 or 8 years. There's no way I'll be sent to the battlefield. I'm now in contact with my former army. They hired me to be their spokesperson just to shoot some army promotional videos or participate in some army cultural activities and sing some songs. There's no danger. My shooting skills are actually not bad. I used to have a foundation in shooting. I even practice skeet shooting at my friend's place. I'm actually not the best at playing with guns. Give me a few throwing knives. These are more useful than guns in short to medium range encounters." As they chatted, they even changed a few weapons to try out. In the end, Yang Yi even saw a cold weapon in the gun register. "Bow and arrow? They actually have this in the gun club. Can I give it a try?" Yang Yi showed a great deal of interest. At noon at Nelson's bar, under his special hospitality, they had a simple lunch. Yang Yi and Mo Henian actually played to their heart's content until the evening. Only then did they leisurely drive the Burning Cloud sports car that had been gangbanged by a few old men home. Coincidentally, Zhou Mingyu and Murphy had just arrived home with the children. They heard the muffled roar of an engine. When they turned around, they saw a bright-colored convertible sports car with a ferocious aura coming from afar. Zhou Mingyu and Murphy were so scared that they hurriedly pulled Shishi's hand and hid in a safe place. However, the sports car swung its tail and stopped in the courtyard. At this moment, they finally saw Imohenian and Yang Yi in the car, who were laughing mischievously. Of course, it was just their misconception that he was smiling wickedly. "What are you doing?" Murphy smiled and said. "Yang Yi, where did you take my papa to play?" In fact, Murphy was very happy because she saw the close relationship between Yang Yi and Imohenian. They had only not seen each other for a day. How did the two of them suddenly get along? What had they gone through? Do you still need to ask? Look at their car. They must have gone to buy a car. Zhou Mingyu snorted softly. They spent money recklessly. Hee, you guessed wrong, Imohenian said proudly. We didn't spend a penny to get this car back. Do you want to know how we got it? While her father-in-law was talking excitedly, Shishi ran to her father, who had just got out of the car. She couldn't wait to lift up the bag in her hand and smiled sweetly. Papa, look, Grandma bought this for me. Murphy didn't pay attention to this, or she would have complained in her heart. I paid for it. Yang Yi smiled and touched his daughter's little head. He said, Did you have fun shopping with Grandma today? This was a wrong answer. Shishi pouted her small mouth, stood on tiptoe, and showed her father the dark blue bag with a cartoon pattern in her hand. She said unwillingly, No, Papa, look at my bag. Is it beautiful? It's beautiful. Did you pick it or Grandma? You have such good taste. Yang Yi praised. Only then did Cece giggle in satisfaction. Grandma picked it. After the little girl let her father admire her new bag, she curiously sized up the sports car behind her father. The car had a streamlined body and was painted with a bright red paint that resembled a burning cloud. Do you like it? Come on, Dad will drive you around. Yang Yi smiled and waved at Shishi. The little girl liked to go for a ride, especially when the car was fast. She liked it very much since she was a child. When Yang Yi took Murphy and Shishi to Cayenne to play, she often asked her father to roll down the window. After a round of driving, Cece grew even more fond of this good-looking car. In the evening, Murphy was a little tired after shopping for a day. After all, she was responsible for pushing the car and carrying things. After coaxing Tong Tong, she went to bed early. Cece, on the other hand, was full of energy. She chattered about today's experience to her father, and even vividly repeated what her grandmother had told her about dressing up. Grandma said that we should all have bags. School bags are not bags. She said, lying comfortably in her father's arms. Yang Yi listened patiently and said, You bought a lot of clothes today. You also bought a lot. There are many dresses and many other styles of clothes. I just found them when I was organizing them for you. There are so many beautiful clothes. As Cece spoke, she mischievously raised her little feet and reached out to play with them. She twisted and turned, not looking sleepy at all. But you bought so many clothes. How can you wear them all? Yang Yi asked. She blinked. She had never thought about this problem. Now she looked at her father and said innocently, Papa, can I wear new clothes every day? That's too wasteful. Yang Yi shook his head gently. But Grandma said that I need a lot of clothes to wear enough. She said with her little hands and pouted. Although Yang Yi didn't think there was anything wrong with buying clothes for his daughter, Yang Yi secretly frowned at the situation tonight. It seemed that after coming back today, Shishi's interest had all run to clothes, bags, and all kinds of clothes. She couldn't stop talking about Grandma said. Last night, before going to bed, she had pestered him to continue telling her the story of the Chronicles of Narnia. Tonight, she didn't want to listen to the story at all. Yang Yi didn't deny that his mother-in-law's aesthetic and fashion standards were indeed very high. He also hoped that Shishi would dress beautifully. However, Yang Yi didn't want Shishi to be like other rich girls who only thought about clothes and bags. It was so tacky that it was disgusting. However, Shishi was still in high spirits, so Yang Yi didn't make any moves. The next morning, Yang Yi went to discuss with Imohenian. After hearing what he said, Imohenian generously waved his hand and said, You won this car. You can do whatever you want with it. Therefore, Yang Yi went upstairs and leaned against the door frame, looking at Shishi who was playing happily with the Great Dane. Shishi, Papa will take you for a ride. Let's drive the car that Papa won yesterday, okay? Yang Yi said softly. Okay. Papa, I like to ride in this car. Shishi was overjoyed when she heard this. She ran over and said, But Papa, can Dahe come with us? Dahe was the name of the Great Dane raised by Emohenian. In the future, I'll take Dahe with me. Today, it's just the two of us, Yang Yi said. Chapter 797. For this long trip, Yang Yi installed a baby safety seat for Shishi. However, the comfort of the convertible sports car did not decrease at all. The little girl sat in the sports car, and when the car drove onto the country road, Yang Yi slightly increased the speed. She happily grabbed the seat belt and looked left and right in the car. Which side was she looking at? She looked at her father driving. When he was concentrating on driving, his expression was so serious. Or if she looked at the front, the scenery in front was following the whistling sound of the wind, rushing toward her face at a fast speed. Or if she looked at the side, the beautiful scenery rushing toward her was also quickly disappearing. Papa, I haven't said goodbye to Xiaobai today. Shishi happily laughed for a while. Finally, she had a little free time to think about other things. The little girl said to her father in a daze. You can play with it tomorrow, Yang Yi casually said. But I told Xiaobai yesterday that I would play with it today. Shishi shook her little head and said seriously. You can't break your promise. Xiaobai will be very sad. Yang Yi turned his head and looked at Shishi's watery eyes. They were very clean and very pure. He smiled and said, Okay, Papa will borrow a little bit of your time in the morning, and then we'll go home. In the afternoon, you can play with Xiaobai. This way you can keep your promise, right? Shishi thought about it carefully and felt that it was quite reasonable. She happily said, In. The country road kept going north. Yang Yi followed Emohenian's instructions. Soon, he drove the sports car to the largest farm in the town. Several cowboys guided him to find Doug, who happened to be at home. Yang, I'm very surprised that you actually came to my house as a guest. Hey, you even brought your little princess? Doug came out of his mansion, which was a bit like the White House. When he saw Yang Yi and his daughter, he knew that Yang Yi was not here to find trouble. He immediately became enthusiastic again. Doug, I'm here to return this car to you. Yang Yi smiled and said. Return it to me? Why? You won it. We cowboys always admit defeat. Moreover, I'm not someone who can't bear to part with a car, Doug said with some surprise. As he spoke, he proudly pinched the brim of his cowboy hat. Shishi was also a little surprised. She looked at her father with a puzzled expression. Why did Dad return the car? Isn't this our car? Such a beautiful car. The little girl couldn't help but tug at her father's hand. She stared at him, as if begging him to take back this strange thought. Yang Yi stubbornly said, I respect the spirit of cowboys, but I also have my own principles, and that is not to gamble. Gambling is not good. Not only does it cause people to lose a lot of money, it also affects relationships and hurts the feelings of many friends and family members. Why were the Chinese so troublesome? Doug was confused and could not help but say, But I don't care about this sports car. In the beginning, gambling and fooling around is also a source of evil. It's just like when Adam and Eve ate the apple. Yang Yi said seriously. It will stimulate the greed in our hearts. In the end, the gambling will only get bigger and bigger until one day, it will be too late for regrets. So we have to stop this greedy thought from the beginning. Shishi's eyes were wide open as she listened to her father's explanation. While she was subtly influenced by him, her admiration for her father's noble soul grew. But why did you still take the keys yesterday? Doug did not deny that Yang Yi was right. He was not as determined as before, but he was still a little curious. Did Emo agree to you returning the car? He was very supportive of my actions. He said that it would be a good role model for our children to see. Yang Yi smiled slightly and patted Shishi's little head lovingly. As for taking the keys yesterday, it was because your car was too cool. I couldn't help but want to try driving it. At the same time, I wanted to let my child experience a sports car. Doug could not help but laugh. He winked at Shishi and said, Child, what do you think of this car? Is it fun? Under her father's encouraging gaze, Shishi mustered up the courage to answer this unfamiliar grandfather. "Sir, I think your car is very beautiful." In the end, the confused Doug could not persuade Yang Yi and took the car back. However, after this incident, he liked Yang Yi even more. He personally promised that he would provide more help to Yang Yi's father-in-law's farm. Yang Yi held Xishi's hand as they walked out of Doug's farm. Mohinian's jeep was already waiting outside. Xishi hugged her grandfather in surprise. Yang Yi was not very surprised, because he had noticed that his father-in-law's car had been following behind them. After Mohinian let Xishi get into the car, he looked at Yang Yi and said emotionally, "Your education is very expensive. This sports car should be worth at least $500,000, and this was based on the fact that it was cheaper to buy a car in America. But it's worth it." Yang Yi smiled. "Where are we going next?" "Let's go to the supermarket in town. I want to buy a bicycle for Xishi." Yang Yi said, "She has reached the age of learning how to ride a bicycle." The world of children was very simple. She did not show any reluctance or regret when the sports car was returned. On the contrary, when she knew that her father was going to buy a bicycle for her, Xishi was very happy. After buying the bicycle and returning home, Xishi, who had not been willing to take off her beautiful red helmet, elbow pads, knee pads, and other equipment, rushed into the house dressed like a rider. She shouted excitedly, "Mom! Mom! Grandma! Come and see my bicycle. Papa bought a bicycle for me." "A bicycle?" Murphy was curious and followed her out. Murphy saw Yang Yi carry a small children's bicycle from the Jeep. It had a red metal body and 2 high grips. It looked very interesting. However, although it was a children's bicycle, the rear wheel did not have 2 auxiliary small wheels. Like an ordinary bicycle, it was dangerous to fall. Murphy, Zhou Mingyu, and even Tong Tong watched. At noon, Xishi rode her red bicycle shakily. Of course, Yang Yi helped her to hold the back seat to keep her balance. "Slow down. Don't fall." Zhou Mingyu watched Xishi pedaling with all her strength. She was worried that her granddaughter would fall, so she anxiously commanded from the side, "What do you mean slow down? It's easier to fall if you slow down." Mohinian corrected her. "You have to ride fast to keep your balance." Xishi rode the bicycle shakily. She twisted and turned. In fact, she was very nervous. Her little face was tense. She did not pay attention to what her grandmother and grandfather were saying. She only cared about calling out to her father behind her. "Papa, don't let go, okay? I'm scared." It was the first day of riding a bicycle. Yang Yi still wanted to protect Xishi and let her feel the sense of balance when riding a bicycle. Therefore, he did not let go of her. Although Xishi twisted and turned every once in a while and looked like she was about to fall, with her father behind her, she did not fall in the end. She was still able to stop and regain her balance. Xishi rode the bicycle. Although it was dangerous, she enjoyed the feeling of riding a bicycle. Especially after riding for more than half an hour, she gradually found a sense of balance. Ha ha ha. The little girl's bell-like laughter echoed in the garden-like courtyard. At night, before going to bed, Xishi did not mention the matter of buying clothes yesterday. She obediently listened to her father tell her a story, and was ready to go to bed. However, Yang Yi still had something to say to her. "Xishi, Papa wants to ask you. Today you sat in a sports car, rode a bicycle, and played with Xiaobai in the afternoon. Which do you think is the most interesting? And the most fun?" Xishi blinked her eyes. After thinking for a while, she said awkwardly, "Papa, I think it's all very fun. I like to ride a bicycle, but I also like to play with Xiaobai." "How about Papa drive you in a sports car?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. "That's also very fun. But Papa, we have already returned the sports car to Grandpa Doug," Xishi said in confusion. "Yes, you think that riding a bicycle, driving a sports car, and playing with Xiaobai are all equally interesting, right?" Yang Yi said with a smile. Xishi nodded her little head. She felt that it was difficult to tell which was more fun. "Xishi, do you know? In our lives, there are actually a lot of temptations. Just like a sports car, just like a lot of expensive and beautiful clothes." Yang Yi sat up, looked into Xishi's eyes and said. Xishi looked at her father in confusion. She did not know what her father was talking about. Will you refuse to play with Xiaobai because you like to sit in a sports car that doesn't belong to us? Yang Yi asked. Shishi shook her head and said seriously, no, that sports car is Grandpa Doug's, but Xiaobai is mine. I like Xiaobai. Then, will you like those expensive clothes and bags that Papa can't afford, just like the bag that Grandma bought you yesterday? Because you like them, you won't wear the clothes that Papa bought for you before, which are not so expensive? Yang Yi asked. This is the same principle. No. Shishi shook her head first. Then, it took her a while to figure out the connection between the two. Then she whispered to her father, I also like the clothes that Papa bought for me. But Papa, the clothes that Grandma bought for me, we don't want to return them to Grandma, okay? The little girl looked at her father with her watery eyes. She was afraid that her father would return her clothes and bags like the sports car. Grandma said that she bought them for me. Yang Yi smiled and said, Of course not. Papa allows you to keep those clothes. Papa also thinks that you look beautiful in them. Shishi breathed a sigh of relief and smiled happily. Yang Yi said slowly, Papa just wants you to understand that the expensive clothes and bags that Grandma bought for you are like that sports car. They are full of novelty and can make you feel satisfied. The ordinary clothes and bags that Papa bought for you are like Xiaobai. They are very comfortable and beautiful, but more importantly, they are reliable. Also, there are a lot of cheap but interesting clothes and bags out there that you haven't tried before, just like the bicycle you rode today. You didn't know them before, but they're worth exploring and pursuing. Shishi seemed to be able to understand, and she listened very seriously. Now that you are enjoying expensive and beautiful clothes and bags, you shouldn't forget the ordinary clothes that you used to wear, and the bag that accompanied you for many years. Don't be reluctant to leave those expensive things and easily satisfy yourself, because in this world, there are many inconspicuous but interesting things that are waiting for you to explore. Yang Yi said with a smile. Okay? Shishi nodded obediently. She turned around, hugged her father's arm, and said in a sweet voice, Hee, I know. I like Grandma, but I will always like Papa. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment. He smiled and patted the little girl's head, feeling a little happy in his heart. It seemed that Shishi misunderstood something. However, she remembered what her father said. She believed that she would slowly understand it in the future. Chapter 798. Shishi would soon discover that although exploring the unknown was interesting, it also came with a price. Learning to ride a bicycle wasn't just a matter of being protected by her father. If she wanted to truly learn how to ride a bicycle, she would have to suffer a little. After a few days of silence, Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting quietly updated in the middle of the night. My heart aches for Shishi. She fell while learning how to ride a bicycle and scraped her calf. Looking at her tearing up from the pain, I suddenly regretted letting go. But then again, if I didn't let go, how would she learn how to ride a bicycle? Fortunately, Shishi didn't act coquettishly in the end. After treating her wound, she bravely picked up the bicycle and parked it herself. Have a good rest and continue to work hard tomorrow. There were 2 photos attached to the micro-broadcast. One was the back view of Cece riding a bicycle crookedly, while the other was a close-up of her injured calf. Although only a part of her calf appeared in the camera, it was obvious that it was Shishi's. In the photo, the wound had been treated and bandaged by Yang Yi. A small circle of gauze was wrapped around the wound, but from the redness of the skin on the side, it was obvious that the wound was bleeding and the wound was broken. Seeing the micro-broadcasting, the fans felt sorry for Shishi and blamed Yang Yi. F***ck father-in-law. Why didn't you protect my wife well? If it were me, I definitely wouldn't let go. There were many people calling him father-in-law. This had become a daily occurrence under Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting. Look at the wound, our little cutie must be in a lot of pain, right? Quickly get better. This seemed to be a comment from a sister fan. It's true that you have to fall a few times to learn how to ride a bicycle. No need to make a fuss. I don't care if you are sad or not. What I care about is why there are 2 photos, but neither of them shows Shishi's face. Someone pointed out the problem indignantly. I want to see Shishi's face too. I want to see what happened to our little cutie. There were also some fastidists who said indignantly, "Didn't you find the flaw in figure 1? Why did Shishi fall and get hurt?" "It's because Yang Yi didn't look at Shishi properly after he let go. He's taking photos." Microbroadcasting was liked by many people, and there were also people who followed the comments to denounce Yang Yi, who was busy taking photos. This was really unfair to Yang Yi. Of the 2 photos, only the second one was taken by Yang Yi. The first one was taken by Murphy when she was watching Shishi learn how to ride a bicycle. At that time, Shishi was riding the bicycle crookedly in front, and Yang Yi was following behind. However, Murphy deliberately chose a scene where she could avoid Yang Yi. She just wanted to take a picture of her daughter trying to ride the bicycle. Although Cece had fallen, perhaps because she had inherited her father's excellent genes, she was still very talented in sports. She had a good sense of balance. On the second day after the fall, Shishi didn't fall again. She gradually mastered the skill of maintaining balance when riding alone. At first, she was a little shaky, but later she rode more and more steadily. Yang Yi didn't even need to follow beside her to protect her. He watched Shishi ride in circles from afar. Looking at her happy smile, he sighed in his heart. Learning how to ride a bicycle, does that count as growing up? However, on this day not only did Shishi bring a surprise to Yang Yi, but when the family sat together to prepare for dinner, Mo Henian carried a long box from the side and handed it to Yang Yi. "You prepared a gift for little Yang." Zhou Mingyu was a little surprised and smiled. But the old man was unwilling to admit it. He snorted and said, "Who said it's a gift? Last time at the club he helped me win against that old fox, Doug. This is the reward." "You're my father-in-law. It's my duty to help you. What reward do you want?" Yang Yi evaded when he heard this. Murphy watched from the side, and her heart was full of joy. Although her father didn't admit it, Murphy could feel that his attitude toward Yang Yi had changed dramatically. Murphy smiled and pressed the long box that Yang Yi was evading into Yang Yi's hand. She said, "Papa gave it to you, so take it." "Papa, you're really too much. It's obviously a gift, but you still say it's not." She didn't wait for Yang Yi's explanation. She waved her hand and looked curiously at Yang Yi. She said, "Well, let's not talk about this. Yang Yi, open it and take a look. See what Dad gave you. It seems a little heavy. What is it?" Opening the gift, Shishi was arranged to sit next to her grandmother, so she couldn't see from her own chair. But how could she miss such a wonderful scene of opening the gift? Even if the gift wasn't hers. "Wait a minute, I want to see it too." The little girl turned around and jumped down from her chair. She giggled and walked over to her father's side to look at it. Yang Yi opened the box, revealing another plastic box that looked like a toolbox. There was a logo on the box, which was a combination of the words XXX hunting bow and a logo of antlers. No wonder it was heavy. Yang Yi opened it, by the way, revealing some materials for assembling a hunting bow and the shafts of 12 arrows inlaid with sponge. The shafts were made of carbon and aluminum. They were very strong and strong, unlike the soft and light arrows used in the shooting field. These were hunting arrows. "Papa, why did you buy Yang Yi a bow and arrows?" Murphy asked in surprise. She thought it was a gift, but it turned out to be such a strange thing. Mo Henian said lightly, "Last time at the club, I saw that he liked to play with bows, so I asked someone to order one for him." This was an American-style hunting bow. In fact, Yang Yi preferred traditional hunting bows. Traditional bows were heavier than modern American-style hunting bows, but the disadvantage was that they didn't have an arrow stand. But Yang Yi played with traditional bows in the jungle in his previous life, and he played with them to a certain extent. An arrow stand was meaningless to him. But after all, it was a gift from his father-in-law. Yang Yi smiled happily and said, "Dad, you know me well. I've always wanted a bow and arrows. Although I can't take it back, it's not bad to play with it here." The main reason why he couldn't take it back was that the customs procedures were too troublesome. Moreover, even if he took it back, he wouldn't have a chance to use it. Shishi looked at it for a while and found that it was something she was not interested in, so she turned back disappointedly. Murphy saw that Yang Yi liked it, so she didn't say anything. "It's not a problem to buy you a bow and arrows. Originally, I wanted to buy you a hunting gun, but you can't get a gun license. When you go hunting, you can use my gun. Emohenian said to Yang Yi gently. Yang Yi said confidently. In the forest, guns and bows mean the same to me. Dad, just watch. When the time comes, I'll use the bow and arrows to shoot a few coyotes for you to see. The hunting activity soon began. Yang Yi only spent a day familiarizing himself with the new bow and arrows. Beria called Emohenian and asked him to prepare for the gathering. Chapter 799. Papa, I want to go too. Can I? Papa, take me to play with you, okay? When Yang Yi was arranging the equipment in the bedroom, Shishi pouted and came in from the door. Shishi didn't understand the meaning of hunting, and didn't know what her father was going to do. She just wanted to go with her father. Not today. Dad and Grandpa are going to a dangerous place. It's not convenient to take you. You see, Mom and brother didn't go. Yang Yi smiled and pointed to Murphy next to him. Murphy's eyes were a little red. Although she knew that Yang Yi was unlikely to be in danger this time. Hunting was a risky sport after all, so she couldn't help but worry. I told you not to go, but you still want to go. Isn't it better to leave this kind of thing to those experienced cowboys? Murphy couldn't help complaining. Although she was complaining, Murphy's deep concern for him was expressed through these few words. Yang Yi turned around and hugged Mo Fei. Even little Wan was held in his arms. He kissed Mo Fei's forehead and said with a smile, "Don't worry, it's not like you don't know my skills, and with me here, I can also take care of our dad." Murphy knew that she couldn't persuade Yang Yi, and she could also feel Yang Yi's inner desire. Maybe this was a man? She had to say, "Anyway, you have to pay attention to your safety. Don't try to be brave, okay?" "Well, I promise you." Yang Yi nodded with a smile. When he came back and packed the backpack, she was still looking at her father. "I really can't go today. Stay at home with Mom." Yang Yi rubbed the little girl's head. Cece hugged her father's big hand and pouted her little mouth. However, in the end, she still nodded unhappily and said reluctantly, Then, Papa, you have to pay attention to your safety." "Well, thank you, Shishi. Dad will pay attention to his safety." The Mo family's farm sent out 3 people. The experienced old Ford brought Emohenian and Yang Yi to gather at Beria's farm. Here, Yang Yi was surprised to see Doug and his 2 farm cowboys, as well as Stuart and his 2 sons, who were better at shooting. "Why is Doug here?" Yang Yi asked Emohenian in surprise. How could he not come for such an interesting event? Emohenian chuckled. Seeing that Yang Yi was carrying a bow and a quiver of arrows, Doug curiously came over and asked, "Yang, where's your gun?" "This is it." Yang Yi patted the assembled hunting bow on his back and smiled. "Hunting with a bow." Doug was surprised as he continued. "Although I've seen some young people hunting with bows and arrows, isn't it a waste for you to use a bow and arrow? How can a sharpshooter like you not have a hunting rifle? Emo, are you being too stingy?" "Doug, what did you say?" Emohenian glared at him. Doug ignored Emohenian and turned around to ask his cowboy to bring over his gun pouch. He took out a rifle and an optical scope from it and handed them to Yang Yi. "Try this one. It's my favorite, the R-18 rifle. It's very useful for hunting wolves from a long distance. If you like it, I'll get someone to handle the paperwork and give it to you." Yang Yi had heard of the R-18 rifle before. It was a famous standard caliber hunting rifle in the world. It was a bolt-action single-shot rifle with good accuracy. After installing an optical scope, it could even achieve mid-range sniping. The one in Doug's hand was indeed his favorite. The body of the gun was very clean and shiny, as if it was coated with a layer of gloss. However, it wasn't very attractive to Yang Yi. Yang Yi smiled and rejected Doug's good intentions. Emohenian looked at Doug proudly and said, "See, it's not that I'm stingy. It's just that he doesn't want to use a gun. This bow was given to him by me. He likes this kind of plaything." "What a pity, what a sharpshooter." Doug could only ask his men to put away the R-18 as he shook his head regretfully. Actually, Yang Yi had brought a gun with him. Emohenian gave him a pistol, and Yang Yi kept it in the holster behind his back. With his jacket covering it, it couldn't be seen. However, Yang Yi felt that he basically didn't need a pistol. Berea walked in with a few people and gathered everyone for a short meeting. Yang Yi also understood not long ago why Uncle Berea was leading the team. It turned out that his family was a famous hunter family in Big Grassland Town. They were best at hunting prey. Berea took out a printed map of the forest and gestured. These few days, Isaac has already gone to investigate. The recent distribution of the wolves in our forest should be this area and this area. We have a lot of people. Now let's divide the work. I'll lead a team. Mo and your men, Doug and the rest will follow me. We'll set off from this road and approach the wolves here. Isaac and Sebastian will lead a team with Stuart and the children. We'll outflank them from this road and try to catch both groups of coyotes in one go. Otherwise, when winter comes, our cattle and sheep will suffer. No problem. Stuart nodded. The two young men behind him who looked like they were in their early 20s rubbed their hands together excitedly. Doug also smiled at Yang Yi and said, "It's my honor to be in the same team as you." Berea saw that they had no objections and clapped his hands. "Okay. Everyone check your equipment one last time. We'll set off in 10 minutes. The cowboys' movements were very nimble. After tidying up, everyone took their equipment and went outside the house to ride the horses they brought. Yang Yi also rode beside Mohenian. Berea led their big team and majestically killed their way into the primitive forest behind his farm. After all, it was a primitive forest. As they went deeper, the surrounding trees became taller and denser. The sunlight shone through the gaps between the thick leaves. Even though the mottled leaves formed a few light shadows, it only made the forest look brighter. It couldn't let people judge the current time. Yang Yi preferred this kind of hidden and cool feeling. In the forest, he seemed to feel that the pores on his body were breathing comfortably, as if he belonged here. Berea was very experienced. He didn't need a compass at all. Looking at the very familiar trees in the forest, he didn't need a map and could point out a path for horses to travel on. These paths were almost all created by the hunters after cutting down some bushes and obstacles. However, on such a complicated forest path, Yang Yi and the others couldn't rush their horses. They could only slowly walk forward, just a little faster than ordinary people walking. Perhaps because their team had been talking and laughing all the time, their movements were relatively loud. They didn't see any large or medium-sized animals along the way. However, on the trees, they would occasionally encounter a group of small birds jumping happily on the trees. It was very interesting to see them fly up and down. According to Berea's explanation, those were black-crowned tits, which were also allowed to hunt. However, these palm-sized birds really couldn't attract the attention of these ambitious hunters. After walking for a long time in the mountains, Berea called out to everyone and lowered his voice. "Soon, we will reach the area where the coyotes are active. Don't make any noise to scare them." The cowboys who were talking and laughing just now were all serious at this moment. Doug, like the others, took down a shotgun and held it in his hand. Yang Yi didn't move. His ears were sharper than anyone else's, and he could hear that there was no strange movement nearby. Finally, they arrived at the place. Berea asked everyone to dismount and gather the horses. He calmed them down and asked a hunter from the Berea family to stay behind and look after them. Subsequently, Berea took the rest of the people to the ambush site to make a simple bunker. In fact, they just picked a bush downwind and put some branches and dead leaves as camouflage. They hid behind it and set up their guns. Is this how they play? Isn't this too shameless? Nearly 10 rifles. Are they going to play a tower defense game? Even if there were dozens or hundreds of coyotes, wouldn't they be able to eliminate them? But the problem was that coyotes were different from wolves. They didn't appear in groups. Most of them were male and female, and at most there were a few children. Even the largest family, including the pot, could only be counted with 2 hands. This was a bit too much. When it came to hunting, Yang Yi preferred guerrilla warfare. It was best to hunt alone. But today he had to protect Mohenian. He couldn't be alone. So, he had to be patient and follow the team. Then, Yang Yi was about to have an eye-opener. Berea actually took out a pager and blew it. That was a simulator of the sound of rabbits struggling. They weren't waiting for the coyotes to appear, but took the initiative to lure them. Are all Americans hunting like this? Chapter 800. The power of the pager was a bit beyond Yang Yi's imagination. After Barya blew for 5 or 6 minutes, he heard some rustling sounds coming from the depths of the forest. Yang Yi turned his head and looked. A coyote with grayish-black fur and a body similar to a husky appeared in his field of vision. Obviously, it was not a husky. Its tail was fluffy and much thicker. Its mouth was sharp and looked somewhat similar to a fox's. These details also benefited from Yang Yi's extraordinary eyesight. And he actually discovered it earlier than Barya. Barya was slightly slower to see the appearance of the coyote. Barya quietly continued to blow the pager, raised his hand to call everyone, and pointed in the direction of the coyote. Sure enough, the coyote did not act alone. There was more than one coyote. Behind its tail, a little further away, there was another coyote. Its erect ears exposed its position in the bushes. Everyone held their breaths with rapt attention, not making the slightest sound. Although the downwind and the distance advantage could make Yang Yi's scent not easy to be discovered by the coyotes, if they opened their mouths to speak, these dog-like coyotes with extremely developed hearing would definitely detect them. These guys were very cunning. If they found something wrong, they would usually run away. Barya patted Doug and pointed to the first coyote for him. According to the previous agreement, Barya's sign language meant that Doug and his men would deal with the first coyote, and Barya would help them cover the field and finish the shot. Then, Barya patted Emohenian and pointed to the one further away. Emohenian, Doug and the others nodded. They raised the guns in their hands and aimed at the 2 coyotes. Old Ford also picked up a rifle. How could Yang Yi fall behind? He squatted and took the hunting bow from his back. There was also an arrow in his hand that had been pulled out at some point. He gently put it on the bowstring, but he did not pull the bow yet. He was waiting for Barya's signal. They had to shoot at the same time to prevent the other one from escaping. However, at this time Emohenian, who had already taken aim, turned his head, glanced at Yang Yi, and pointed to the front. The meaning of the old man was obvious. He wanted Yang Yi to deal with the coyote, and he would not shoot first. Emohenian still cared for his son-in-law quite a lot. Although he still scolded when he should, he was always thinking of Yang Yi. Yang Yi felt warm in his heart and nodded at him. Barya extended 3 fingers and began to count down. 3, 2, 1. It was a silent language. Yang Yi stood up abruptly as if an order had been given. The bowstring of his hunting bow was pulled back to its fullest in an instant. The bow was bent like a half-moon, and the bowstring was pulled taut. From the moment he released the bowstring, it took less than half a second. Clang! The sound of the arrow was covered by the gunshots of the cowboys, but the cold arrow quietly cut through the warm air. It crossed a long distance in one step and sank into the body of the target coyote. Barya held the gun and pressed his cheek against the body of the gun. He raised his eyelids and looked at the 2 coyotes. He did not know if the 2 teams of Doug and Emohenian could hit the target with so many shots. He needed to judge. If the coyote was not dead and wanted to escape, he would quickly finish it off. However, the speed of the coyotes was not slow, especially when they went into the bushes and used the cover of the bushes to escape. Even an experienced hunter like Barya could not guarantee that he could hit them. If that happened, they would really escape. Barya watched closely, especially the coyote that Emohenian was in charge of. He knew that Emohenian wanted his son-in-law to try his hand. But to use a bow? Barya felt that the possibility of Yang Yi failing was higher. But what surprised Barya was that he saw the 2 coyotes react quickly when they heard the sound. However, it was too late. They suddenly jumped up and twitched as if they were hit by something. They could still struggle and run for 2 steps, but in the end, they could not support themselves and finally fell to the ground. They were hit. Barya smiled. He put down the gun in his hand, pushed the safety bolt, and picked up the telescope hanging on his chest to check the condition of the 2 coyotes. The first coyote fell to the ground. Barya could not see the situation clearly, but the second coyote was interesting. There was an arrow in its body. Obviously, Emohenian's son-in-law had shot it. Beautiful shot, my friend. Barya turned around in surprise and said to Yang Yi, "What? Doug came over and asked excitedly, "Yang shot the coyote. Let's go take a look." Beria wasn't sure if Yang Yi's arrow was the key to killing the coyote because it was too far away and he couldn't see the wound on the coyote. He smiled easily and led everyone to the place where the 2 coyotes died. Of course, they could not take it lightly. Baya picked up a long branch on the road and sharpened it with a knife. He poked the 2 coyotes from a distance to ensure that they were dead. Only then did he ask everyone to come closer to check. The first thing they saw was the coyote that Doug had killed. The coyote had a fatal wound on its body. Obviously, one of the 3 of them had shot it. Barnes shot it. Baya pulled open the coyote's blood-stained fur, looked at the bullet that was shot, and made a judgment. Woo-woo. Barnes was a cowboy on Doug's farm. When he heard that it was his credit, he whistled and proudly raised the shotgun in his hand. Then, Baya picked up the fat coyote and dragged it to another coyote. When everyone got closer, they found that the coyote that was shot only had 1 wound on its body. It was the place where the arrow had shot it. "You shot very accurately." Baya turned his head in surprise and looked at Yang Yi. He pointed to the place where the arrow was inserted and said, "This is its lung. You killed it in 1 shot." Doug took the lead and applauded Yang Yi. Yang Yi smiled calmly. However, he actually felt a little regretful in his heart. Yang Yi aimed at the coyote's head, and he also accurately judged its displacement distance. Yang Yi was also very skilled and bold. He wanted to play some tricks. After all, headshot was the most unreliable hunting method. The probability of hitting the body was higher, but high risk had high returns. This way he could also kill it in 1 shot and preserve its hair more completely. Unfortunately, even though Yang Yi practiced for the whole day yesterday, he still could not use the foundation of his previous life. That arrow was a little off target. The long arrow went straight for the coyote's neck. Strangely, perhaps due to the effect of the gunshot, the coyote's movements were a little faster. In the end, the long arrow hit its lung. It was an accident and it was killed in 1 shot. But that was enough to amaze Doug and the others. "Chinese soldiers are amazing," Doug praised. "I finally understand why you don't want to use a gun." "Chinese soldiers? Special forces? From the Marine Corps?" Beria asked with interest. "No, just an ordinary soldier." Yang Yi smiled. "It's just that I used to hunt, so I like to shoot arrows." They did not pursue the matter. After Baya asked everyone to take photos of the coyotes, he called for everyone to hang the 2 coyotes on a dead tree. He and the equally experienced old Ford put on gloves, took out sharp knives, and deftly skinned the coyotes. It seemed that they had indeed hunted a lot. Like a butcher dismembering an ox, they quickly pulled, and scraped. After a while, the 2 coyotes' skins were peeled off and treated with special medicine before putting them into their carry-on bags. Baya would take the 2 coyotes' skins back. After treating them, he would bring them back to Doug and Emohenian as souvenirs. The rest of the coyotes' bodies were thrown into the forest by Baya for other animals. They looked down on the coyotes' meat. "Let's clean it up and look for the next coyote's trail." Baya and Ford went to the stream in the forest to wash the blood. Yang Yi and the others naturally followed. However, they did not expect that the coyotes would come to them without them looking for them. Baya and Yang Yi discovered it almost at the same time. Baya asked everyone to stop talking and pointed to the hillside on the other side of the stream. This time, everyone was more familiar with it. They hurriedly found some rocks to hide themselves, and only then did they look into the distance. Yang Yi was the first to discover it, but he did not look carefully just now. Now that he observed carefully, he realized that the 2 coyotes on the other side of the stream seemed to be doing something. They were creeping in the bushes, their grayish-black figures appearing and disappearing. They are also hunting. Baya suppressed the excitement in his heart and answered Yang Yi's doubts in a very soft voice. "Hunting? What were they hunting?" Soon the answer came out. In Yang Yi's vision, a few white-tailed deer appeared. One of them was a big deer, and the other 3 were young deer. The young deer were very small, as if they had just been born not long ago. Their thin and long legs trembled as they walked. It made people tremble in fear, as if their legs were about to break. They were nibbling on the young bush's new buds. The big doe was still vigilant, looking up from time to time. The young deer, on the other hand, were not on guard. They spread their hind legs and lowered their heads. The rich and sweet buds attracted their attention. They were unaware of the impending danger. Chapter 801. In reality, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Young Yi thought to himself. Then the life and death of the cicada is now in the hands of the oriole. In America, there were actually quite a number of white-tailed deer. They were not considered rare animals or endangered animals. People hunted more deer than wolves. For someone like Yang Yi, who was well versed in the law of the jungle, he would not have any compassion for these cute deer. However, he was now a parent. Seeing a few deer in danger, Yang Yi could not help but think of Shi and Tong Tong. Let's save this doe. She gave birth to 3 deer in one litter. These days it is not easy to reincarnate deer. Yang Yi thought as he removed the hunting bow from his back. However, in a flash, the 2 coyotes that had been lurking for a long time had already launched an attack when Yang Yi removed the hunting bow as quietly as possible. Quick! Shoot hit the 2 coyotes. It had to be said that it was not only Yang Yi who had the idea of protecting the deer. Beria did not care that his hands were a little dirty. He quickly threw down the bag with the wolf pelt and took out his gun. However, for safety reasons, everyone's gun was not loaded with bullets. Their reaction was a little slow. Even Beria, who was the fastest, had to grab 2 shotgun shells from the bullet bag at his waist and anxiously stuff them into the double-barreled shotgun. This would take time. 2 coyotes have already rushed to the white-tailed deer. The big doe hurriedly ran away with the baby. Although the little white-tailed deer were just born a few days ago, they were natural runners. Their dexterous posture made them jump up and down in the bushes. In a short time, they ran far away. However, there was a deer that was weak when it was born. Perhaps because it was a triplet, it was ostracized in its mother's stomach and was malnourished. Compared to its brothers and sisters, it was obviously smaller. Its 4 hooves were thin, and when it stood up earlier, it was a little weak. It still needs time to develop, but now the coyotes don't give it a chance. They are very cunning. With a sudden attack, they scared the doe and the other 2 strong fawns to escape without a trace. But they suddenly turned around halfway, changed their target, and rushed to the weak fawns who were also trying to escape, but their speed was worrying. Damn it! Yang Yi unscrewed the cap of the quiver, threw the cap on the ground, and hurriedly pulled out 2 arrows. At this time, he saw a coyote approaching and biting the weak fawn's hind leg. His heart sank. Yang Yi didn't have time to think too much. He knocked 2 arrows in his right hand, knocked one first, raised the hunting bow, pulled the bowstring, and shot. Buzz! The sound of the bow and arrow broke the commotion at the stream. Without the cover of gunshots, it was so clear. Beria turned his head as he stuffed the bullets. He looked at Yang Yi's calm and sharp eyes in surprise. Woo! The cry of a wolf came from the other side. He turned his head again and saw that the coyote that had bitten the fawns had already curled up. It wailed and fell beside the fawns that were still limping. In a documentary about African lions in the past, when a hungry lioness attacked a newborn antelope, it showed a cruel side like a cat playing with a mouse it had caught. It did not bite the antelope that could not run fast at all. Instead, it ran behind the antelope and used its claws to pull one of the antelope's hind legs, constantly interfering with its escape. It would be better to give it a quick death. The little antelope miserably kept running and being teased. In the end, the lioness scratched the little antelope until it was covered in blood and fell to the ground. Only then did she bite the little antelope's throat reluctantly. Coyotes were canines and did not have the leisure to tease the fawns like a big cat. If there was a chance, it would mercilessly bite the fawns' throats. However, it did not have the chance. This time Yang Yi shot very accurately. To be safe, he did not shoot the coyote's head to show off his skills. His arrow directly pierced the coyote's heart. It was also a fatal arrow. However, the fawns that had been bitten on the hind legs were still struggling to limp forward. It was almost crawling now, but it was still crawling in pain. It showed the same tenacious desire to survive as the antelope. When its companion fell to the ground, Another coyote subconsciously chose to rush over to check on it. At that moment, someone fired. Bang! The loud gunshot completely tore apart the silent curtain of the battlefield. It was not Berea. Berea was still pulling the bolt. Doug was faster. He took out his pistol. The pistol did not need to be loaded, so it was much faster. The distance was a little far, and Doug was not a sharpshooter. He missed, but it was enough to scare the remaining coyote. The gunshot was terrifying. Under the shroud of danger, the remaining coyote chose to turn around and flee. Berea could already shoot, but at such a distance, his shotgun could not kill or hit anything. He could only look at the coyote regretfully and think, "It escaped. What a pity." However, he heard the sound of a bowstring again. Under Berea's gaze, the running coyote staggered and fell to the ground again. F***ck. Berea, an experienced hunter, was shocked. He turned to look at Yang Yi as if he was looking at a monster. He looked at Yang Yi, who had calmly put down his hunting bow. How did he hit such an irregular moving target? Bravo! Doug was used to Yang Yi's magical performance. He was not surprised at all. Instead, he was very proud of Yang Yi. He waved his fist and shouted excitedly, "When will Papa come back?" In the afternoon, Shishi sat on the balcony on the second floor. She hugged the railing and sat on the edge. Her two slender legs were hanging down from the balcony. The little girl looked at the entrance of the courtyard in a daze. She looked at the cowboys who were working outside the courtyard in the distance, and whispered in a low voice. On the small sofa on the balcony beside her, the Great Dane was lying on its side. Its long legs stretched out of the sofa. It heard Shishi's whisper and raised its head. It looked at the little master, and then lowered its head again. It was silent. After an unknown amount of time, the Great Dane suddenly pricked up its ears. After a while, it got up from the small sofa and walked to Shishi's side. It wagged its tail and looked in the direction that Shishi was looking at. Not long after, a pickup truck appeared at the end of their vision. Behind it, Ford rode a horse and followed closely with two empty horses. "It's Papa!" Shishi shouted in surprise. The little girl's eyesight was very good. She could see that sitting in the passenger seat was her father, whom she had missed all day. "Blackie, did you see that? Papa is back." Shishi turned her head and said to the black Great Dane in surprise, "Yeah, Papa is back." She did not care whether the Great Dane responded to her. The little girl quickly retracted her long legs, got up from the ground, and ran down happily to greet her father. Chapter 802. Why are you back so early this time? Shishi ran downstairs happily. She saw her grandmother standing downstairs, talking to her grandfather and father. Murphy was also standing beside her. Tong Tong, who was in her arms, also saw her father. She was smiling happily with her little dimples on her face. She reached out her two little hands and cried, "Ah!" She wanted her father to hug her. It was not unreasonable for Zhou Mingyu to feel that it was strange. It was only 3 in the afternoon, and Mo Henian and the others were already back. Although Zhou Mingyu was very happy to see them back safe and sound, according to their past experience of hunting, they usually came back when it was close to night. They were indeed early today. "We saved this deer from 2 wolves in the morning." Yang Yi pointed at the deer tied up in the back of the pickup truck and explained, "Its leg was injured, so we came back first to take it to the vet in town." The pickup truck belonged to Berea, and they came back to inform their family so that they would not worry. "Deer?" Shishi's eyes lit up. She jumped hard at the door on her father's side and shouted, "Papa, I want to see the deer, I want to see the deer." The pickup truck was huge. Yang Yi's tyrant used to be smaller than it. Shishi tried to jump, but she could not reach her father's height. Yang Yi withdrew his hand from Tong Tong and smiled as he opened the back door and asked, "Do you want to go with us? We are going to the vet to treat the deer." It was not convenient to bring Shishi along when they went hunting in the forest. However, the environment was different now. In a safe environment, Yang Yi was happy to let Shishi see some new things. "I want to go." Hee. Shishi climbed up the tall pickup truck happily. The advantage of her long legs was reflected at this time. She climbed up without much effort. She climbed into the back seat and looked in the direction her father pointed. Finally, she saw the deer her father was talking about through the back window. It was a very petite deer, about the same size as the sheep in Grandpa Ford's sheep pen. It had dark brown skin and beautiful rows of white dots on it. The most pitiful thing was its pair of panicked and helpless eyes. Its eyes were big and pure black, but its eyelids were drooping, making it look a little too weak. Papa, Xiaolu is so cute. Why did you tie it up? She defended Xiaolu. Because if we don't tie it up, it will jump out of the car, which is more dangerous. Yang Yi explained. Its leg is injured. Look at its right hind leg. Dad and Grandpa are taking it to the vet for treatment. Hearing that, Cici turned to look at him again. Half an hour later, at the veterinary clinic in town, an old man named Lister, whom Zhang Heng had met at the shooting range last time, called out to Yang Yi and Mo Henian to move the deer from the car onto a canvas. After the rope was untied, the little deer began to struggle again, and even let out a miserable cry. Although it was exhausted, the little guy's desire to live was really admirable. She was on the side, holding her father's hand. She was so nervous that her big eyes were full of worry. It's not a big deal. The wound is in the muscle, and it didn't bite the bone. Clean it up and bandage it. It will get better after a while. Fortunately, Lister was experienced and quickly calmed the deer down. He held Xiaolu's head and checked its wound. She, who was relieved, finally had time to ask her father about the question in her heart. Papa, why was Xiaolu injured? In fact, Yang Yi had asked this question before, but she didn't pay attention. Yang Yi patiently explained to her again, but this time, Yang Yi didn't talk about coyotes. He described the dangerous situation with a concept that she was more familiar with. Big bad wolf. Big bad wolf. Then what should we do? The big bad wolf wants to eat Xiaolu. It's so bad. She said nervously. So, Dad defeated the big bad wolf. Yang Yi gestured and laughed. Dad shot 2 arrows and the 2 big bad wolves fell down, just in time to save Xiaolu. Papa is so powerful. She looked at her father with admiration. Her 2 big eyes seemed to have little stars twinkling. Sit down. It's just a basic operation, haha. Yang Yi laughed. The satisfaction at this moment was even stronger than when he was being admired by his companions when he shot the escaping coyotes. Papa, then what about Xiaolu's papa and mom? After looking at Xiaolu for a while, she suddenly thought of a problem and said worriedly, its papa and mom must be very worried because it was bullied by the big bad wolf. Yang Yi didn't think that his daughter could think of such a problem, and even care about Xiaolu's parents. Its mother ran away with the other 2 fawns, and Dad can't find them. Maybe they thought that Xiaolu had been eaten by the big bad wolf. Yang Yi explained. She looked at her father in surprise. Yes, it doesn't have parents now. Yang Yi nodded. She felt sad for Xiaolu, and the little girl said sadly, Then what about Xiaolu? She liked this beautiful deer very much. When it was being treated, she had been standing next to it, nervously watching Grandpa Lister bandage the deer. When it is cured, send it to Grandpa Doug, the grandpa who we returned the sports car to last time. His family has some deer, so he can help take care of it. Yang Yi said. However, Cici was not happy. After listening to her father's words, she pouted her little mouth unhappily. However, she hesitated and didn't know how to say it. What's wrong? Yang Yi saw his daughter's appearance and guessed her thoughts. He smiled and said, Don't tell me you want to raise Xiaolu. She pursed her lips, twisted her little butt, and stomped her little feet on the ground, and said with grievance, I thought, Daddy, Xiaolu was going to give me a birthday present. Ci's birthday was 2 days later. Yang Yi looked at his daughter's appearance, and his heart softened. He said, It's not that I can't leave it to you, but it's not like Xiao Guai, Baozi and Haihei, who can be raised at home. It's more like Xiao Bai, who lives outside. But that's not a problem, right? Daddy can build a deer pen for it with Grandpa. Yang Yi was a little embarrassed at first, but seeing that she was a little happy, his tone changed and became more positive. And Mo Henian nodded his head cooperatively and said, Lay down some comfortable hay. Oh, right, Lister. Do you know how to raise this deer? What to eat? Horse milk? Milk. This deer should be less than a month old, about 20 days old. You can feed it with goat milk. After a week or so, take some fish liver oil and vitamins. Come to me later, I'll prescribe you medicine. Lister pushed up his glasses and said, I can write you a detailed feeding method. Can we use deer milk? Doug's family should have deer milk. Yang Yi said. Of course, that would be better. Deer milk has the antibodies it needs. Lister smiled and said, Don't worry, this deer is not small, but it's a little undernourished. As long as you take good care of it, it won't be difficult for it to survive. Did you hear that? We can feed the deer at home. Yang Yi turned around and smiled at Shishi. Yay! Shishi jumped up happily and high-fived her father. She even ran over and hugged Grandpa's neck. After Lister finished bandaging, Shishi could finally have her first intimate contact with the deer under her father's protection. Be good, I'll protect you. The little girl squatted in front of the deer and reached out to pat its head. She said softly, I'll call you Hua Hua, okay? You're like a flower, so pretty. Perhaps the deer was a little tired, or perhaps it could feel the kindness of these people in front of it. It didn't struggle like it did at the beginning, but instead obediently licked Shishi's palm. Looking at its little black nose, sharp little face, and pitiful big eyes, how could Shishi not like it? You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.